So good morning, everyone, and warm welcome to the new batch of Spring Boot. Let me get started with some introduction to the course, a very short introduction, because you must have already gone through the website. You must have already watched that video, which tells about the course contents as such. But quickly, I will have a little idea regarding that course. And after we talk about the course, then we will get started with the core technical content right from day one. So we are not going to delay that. The first lecture itself, we are going to learn the Spring core and probably the hello world of Spring Boot. That is something we are planning for the day one. In fact, the today's lecture is one of the most important lecture to understand the foundations and fundamentals of the Spring. So let me just have quickly the introduction of the course, as you must have walked through our course curriculum that is available on our website. So you can check that. And there we have like clearly mentioned the entire syllabus probably in detail. Like something we are going to talk about the Spring ecosystem, Spring core, Spring Boot fundamentals. We'll talk about Spring REST. In fact, Spring REST is a prime reason that Spring Boot people are using. Then we will talk about Spring Data JPA. We will talk about the security. We will talk about the many other additional concepts. And then there are a couple of new additions in this particular course is regarding deployment, which was not there into the earlier versions of this course. So something Docker, EC2, I added a little more. I added GraphQL introduction. And again, as like it is trending, everyone want to learn about AI. So I just thought of, okay, let us discuss about how that AI is been integrated into the course. So this is exactly the syllabus we are going to talk about. Now, by the time I'm talking about the other stuff, like regarding what exactly this particular course is, and then bit orientation of the course, you can ensure that your softwares are ready on your machine. So right now, I would say that I'm using Java 21 on my machine, and Spring Tools ID, if you already have, that is good. If you do not have, I would say that you should go back and you should quickly download that ID. Where you can download that, I'll tell you. So by the time we are talking about the introduction, you can download that. So you can just go to the Spring Tools, which is Spring IO Tools. It is available. And from there, you can go to the Eclipse. We are using Eclipse. So it is STS Eclipse. You can see the latest version is 5.2. Now, depending on whether you're on Linux, whether you're on Mac, whether you're on Windows, please choose the version of your system. And on my machine, I have installed this one, Windows 5.2. Java version minimum required is 17. Anything below that doesn't work with the modern Spring Boot. So Spring Boot premium basic requirement is Java 17. So ensure that you have at least 17. If you have 21, 24, that is even better. Correct? Then another quick introduction regarding this SunBeam portal. Again, I'm giving some introduction so that by the time I'm giving the introduction to the course, or like we are talking about the orientation, you can spend a little time and you can do the parallel activities. Like you can download Spring, you can take a look at the student portal. If you are not activated login, then you can activate the login. So something, it looks like this. So our student portal is over here, which is students.sunbeamapps.org. Many of you might have already done some modular courses at SunBeam. So you might be already used to this particular one. But if at all someone is new, I just say that if you have already enrolled into that course, then you can just go to the student.sunbeamapps.org, and student.sunbeamapps.org, I'm sharing the link. You can connect that. You can try to activate your account. Now, while activate your account, you can give your registration ID, whatever it is, and then you can give the email ID which you have registered with us. If it is done, you will get the OTP on your email ID, and then you can connect. This is something you can do. And then already my login is created, so I can simply jump to that, and yes, it is available. All good. Now, once this is available, make a note. You can find the recorded session, the daily recordings into the recorded sessions. Over there, you need to activate the device for the first time. And the second, you can check the online sessions. These online sessions will be available into your, what is the ID? In future, probably next week onwards, you can expect the meeting ID and passwords will be shared over here. But the most important feature for this online session is we have live code sharing utility. The live code sharing utility means every code that I will be typing, that code will be available. So currently, I have shared day 01 folder with you. This is day 01 folder. So whatever files are present into the day 01, they will be seen to you. You can just go back, and this is day 01. So as soon as I'm typing something over here, I'm saying that like we have course introduction, and then we have Spring Quick Start, something like this. So whatever is being saved over here, it should be reflecting over here. This will be done for all the files, including the source codes. So people who are interested in executing the codes with me, you people have already good hand on Java, then you can find this particular tool very useful, and you can quickly copy and paste and manage the things, right? I hope that should be fine. Now that you have got the idea, you have understanding of this, we can go back and talk about the course introduction. By the time, parallelly, you can download STS, you can install Java, you can probably activate your login, and then get ready for the coding. So, first of all, myself, my name is Nilesh Gule. Currently, I'm technical director at SunBeam, and more than 22 years, I'm into the teaching and some active development as well. Now, Spring Advanced Java is something I started teaching in year 2006. So 2006 was my first batch when I taught this. Now 2026, so actually it completed 20 years. And at that time, the topics that we used to teach was like servlet, JSPs, EJBs was like hot at that time. And then like somewhere struts. And then eventually another 4 5 years, then that struts was slowly faded out, and we had Spring technology. And then of course, I'm then teaching to the Spring. We earlier conducted some batches called as a Spring Hibernate batches. So which was like core Spring and core Hibernate. Hibernate is basically the database connectivity ORM. So I taught like around 10 batches of that, like this only. So almost all batches are like 3 months long. So like a full-fledged course. And when we taught all these kind of courses, and that is good, later on, like somewhere Spring Boot came up. And then people say that, okay, we don't want to learn the core Spring or like Hibernate. We want to go for Spring Boot because like every new project is getting created into the Spring Boot. And then I conducted 2 3 batches of Spring Boot as well. But then due to some personal commitments, I just stopped taking modular batches. And then recently, probably some of you have like frequently, asking कि आप कब Spring Boot पढ़ाने वाले हो? And with that, then finally I thought that, okay, after a couple of years, it is worth that we can launch a batch once in a while, like Spring Boot batch. So this is a Spring Boot batch. So that is started. So thanks to the people who took the consistent follow. Now, as far as this particular course is concerned, what all things that you should be knowing, the prerequisites. The prerequisites is, as I said, that you need on your machine Java 17 or above. But when I say that you need to know Java, what are the basically concepts that you need? The first and foremost concept that you need to know is a composition and interface. In fact, you need that concept right away in the first lecture itself. आज के लेक्चर में भी अपने को कंपोजिशन आना चाहिए. Then we have another one where we talk about the collections. Now, the only two things which are like very frequently used, one is the array list, another is the hash map. So at least that much of collection, we should be comfortable. The third part that I do recommend is, yes, you should be knowing JDBC. Though we are going to use Spring Data JPA, which is at much higher level than JDBC, but still underlying baseline architecture is still JDBC, still Java database connectivity. So you should be knowing that. If you know that, it is well and good. If you don't know, probably I'll share one link of like some YouTube tutorial. I'll add it later and I will share with you. So you can check this profile and you can grab that. If you do not know, you can have a quick look through that basics of JDBC. Now, there are many times people are asking the questions, sir, how exactly this Spring Boot works behind the scene? Now, people, if you are really interested in understanding the internals of Spring, if you want to just write the code of Spring, not a big deal. The basic Java knowledge, only this much of Java knowledge is usually sufficient to type the code and you can understand your code. But if you are interested in knowing how exactly this Spring works behind the scene, then you should know some of the very fundamental concepts of core Java. And these concepts are nothing but reflection, annotation, dynamic proxy. These are certain places which are heavily used by the Spring framework behind the scene. I've seen that most of the time people who learn core Java, they usually do not give enough weightage to these topics. And that is fair if you just want to be a Spring Boot programmer. But for internal understanding, then these topics somehow become mandatory. Having a little knowledge of Java servlet will be helpful, but it is optional. Even though you don't know, probably some information I will share with you during the class only, or some tutorial I will share with you. The next thing, yes, which we need to know is about the Maven. The Maven, so you should be knowing what is Maven. Maven is a build tool. Either Maven or Gradle. These are two most popular tools are available. During this course, I'll be using Maven. Maven is a Java build tool. So all the projects that we'll be creating, all those projects will be compulsorily Maven projects. So you should be knowing just a practical use of that. If you want to know the understanding, yes, we can. Again, I have like one more tutorial for you, which you can refer. This is Java side that should be known before this flow course. And then the second one we have is this, like RDBMS. Now, any RDBMS is fine. I have thought of like using MySQL 8 or even MySQL 9 is also okay. So anything is installed on your machine, you can use that. And if you want to learn that, you can have like a MySQL tutorial. You can use that. Now we are also going for some MVC application, some basic MVC. So for the basic MVC, yes, basics of HTML, CSS, if you know, that would be really useful. We do not need heavy HTML kind of stuff because our course is not UI oriented. We are like more focused onto the Spring REST services. REST services doesn't have that much of backend, that much of UI. So at that time, that is fine. But yes, especially if you are like even thinking of, I want to connect my Spring Boot APIs with the React. For React, yes, you have to have understanding of all these things. So this is something, the prerequisite of the course. Then going ahead, what we are learning in this blog course. A quick idea. In this blog course, I'm not really expecting that you know Spring. If you know Spring, that is great. But even though you do not know Spring at all, that is absolutely fine. So we will learn right from what exactly the Spring, why Spring Boot, each and every topic we will try to cover in detail. No worries on that. We will do all the programming, all hands-on coding. So you'll find that I just keep typing the code in front of you, a lot of code. If probably you are college students or something like that, it might be a bit overwhelming for you. But yes, this course is full of coding code. Probably initial 1-2 day, we need to spend little bit on theory. So having some foundations ready, correct? And then we will cover, as I said, that Spring Core, Spring Boot. We will talk about Spring Data JPA, Spring REST Service. We will talk about security. We will talk about deployment, GraphQL, Spring AI. This is something that we will talk about. And something that is not really included in this blog course is microservices or the Spring Cloud services. Because microservices and Spring Cloud services itself deserves like a huge canvas again, that itself need another at least 4 to 6 weekends where you can talk about the microservice. Of course, when we will talk about Spring REST, at that time I will tell you what exactly the microservice is, and I will also probably show you a basic demo how you can call one Spring REST service from another REST service, or how you can call one microservice from another microservice. So that basic demo we have included. That basic understanding of microservice, yes, we will cover it, but we will not be talking about the microservices and then all those possible options of microservices over there, right? Just take care. Yeah. Done. Um, Rahul sir, Vishaka ma'am, also take a look at the chat. If people are facing some problem, just we can
Yes,
connect on a personal chat, right? Okay. So I was talking about that. And then there is one more that I really didn't plan as a part of this blog course. But then I thought that there is something new feature added into the Spring 5.0 called as a Spring Reactor project. Typically, people who are into the Spring, they might have heard of like Mono and Flux. So if it is like about Mono and Flux kind of stuff, then that one I have taught it earlier. So I had it into the one of the earlier video. I think that when we'll talk about the Spring REST and all that, at that time, I'll share this particular video over here, which might be useful actually when you go for learning microservices, because many of the modern microservices, they are expecting the reactive programming. So at that time, having understanding of what is reactor, that can be really useful, correct? So take care of it. So this was like a basic introduction to the course, what exactly we have, and etc. etc. I just need some introduction from your side as well. And for a quick introduction from your side, I have one short poll created. I would just request that you can go to the poll and try to fill that poll so that we get the idea, and check that all questions are compulsory. Please do mention all the questions over there. Meanwhile, there was one question someone was asking me. Yes, I'm coming to that as well. So there are a couple of more things that we are talking about. So as I said, that all classroom demos, we have the live coding. That session is available during the class. So during the class, it will be there. Take care. Second thing, we have lab assignments. Though it is not compulsory lab assignments, but I'll be sharing the lab assignment on like almost every alternate day. So you can have some assignment and you can do it for your practice so that it helps to cover the foundational topics, right? Some basic syntax clarity, you get it with the lab assignment. And then we will also take one big project as we finish the foundation layer. We will take some good project and we will start implementing that project throughout the course, step by step, keep adding new feature. So most of our teaching will be the kind of project-based training once we finish with the baseline concept, the core concepts, right? Take care. And then we have something schedules. If you want, I can share one or two more topics with you people, which you can develop as a simple hobby project or basic project, even for your practice. One project anyway, I'll be taking it during the class, which will actually cover almost all topics, right from the Spring basics till Spring AI. We will try to integrate into our one particular project. We will do that, correct? Going ahead. So we have next like daily schedules. You see that it is 8 to 12, and we will have a short break of 20 minutes in between, correct? So that you can have your tea break, or even I can have a tea break. So you can please organize yourself as per this. And then the next point, people are asking about the slides and all that kind of stuff. I have slides. I have these notes. These 4 notes are like day01.md. I usually convert all these notes into the PDFs, and those PDFs are uploaded into this. I do have slides. I draw a lot of diagrams in front of you. So those diagrams will be added into the slides. Even those will get uploaded. Assignments and everything. Everything you get it over here. And by default, currently, this particular repository is public. अभी उसके अंदर कुछ भी नहीं होगा. But as you go ahead, I will upload all data over here. From next week, the repository will be private and will be accessible to the enrolled students. Take care of this. The videos are getting recorded. I primarily suggest that you attend the session live. That should be the real USP of the live sessions. You can ask the questions, I can answer, we can have discussions. Okay, that would be really helpful stuff actually. But if at all some sort of emergencies are there, some sort of like a network issues are there, so at that time you really want to go back and like have some revision. So yes, we are recording the videos. They will be available till 31st December. Exactly same is also mentioned on our website. So please plan your studies. If you are going with the recorded session, they will be there for till 31st of December. And there are 2 documentations which are like a best suitable resource. One is Spring documentation and a Spring Boot documentation. People keep asking me, sir, kaun sa book pade? I would say that, to be frank, none of the book is updated with the latest Spring concept. Nahi hai, kuch bhi nahi. So most of the thing that I learned in Spring, I learned from their documentation, and they are really fantastic documentations worth reading. So you can always go back to the documentation, walk through the documentation, and just try small code snippets from there, and they can teach you, trust me, far better than any book. Or I'm not sure, but I not learned from ChatGPT, but it can be, it should be better than even ChatGPT. I feel so. This is nothing but the entire orientation of the course. I guess now I can end the meeting. Sorry, end the poll. Where is the end the poll? Almost most of the people have already done. I'm just stopping the poll. And just to get people clarity regarding who are learning with you, let me also share the poll with you so that you can also take a look at कि कौन हमारे साथ पढ़ रहा है, what is exactly the status, what we should really expect from the course. So as I was knowing that the most of the students participant of this blog course, they are actually from here. What is that? Our PG courses student or modular courses student. So like very rarely someone is there who is entirely new. Like around 4 people I see that who are entirely new, 4 or 5 people. That is okay, no problem. Then we have like why we are joining this training. So cracking the interviews, absolutely. We are upskilling for current job. That is also good enough. Switch to Java. That is good. Certification, learning. Yes. There is no much popular certification of Spring, but yes, you get the certificate of the SunBeam at the end of the course. Correct? No worries. Don't worry. As long as you are upskilling, as long as you are cracking the interviews, or anyone who want to just get into the Spring Boot, you should find this course really useful. अभी आपको स्प्रिंग नहीं आता है, दैट इज फाइन, वी विल स्टार्ट फ्रॉम जीरो. और अगर आपको स्प्रिंग आता है तो वी विल आल्सो डिस्कस सम रियली एडवांस क्वेश्चंस. नो वरीज. So next one, have you used Spring Boot before? So there are 5 people only who have never used it. Okay, that is good. 13 people learned earlier. Okay. Some built small project, and okay, we have some good crowd who are working live. And I'm really excited to know your questions. And I'm sure your questions will be also helpful for other people to learn up to the industry expectations. That is good enough. So what do you expect from the course? Almost everything. I know, I was expecting that. Don't worry, we will cover everything. No issues on that. And then which ID that you have installed? This one. Now someone was asking the question, can we continue with the IntelliJ ID? To be frank, you can, but as I say that IntelliJ Community Edition has got limited support of Spring. So if you want to go with the ID, IntelliJ ID, अगर आपके पास कंपनी का ऑलरेडी इंटेलिजे आईडी का अकाउंट है, प्रोफेशनल और इंटेलिजे कम्युनिटी एडिशन, sorry, not community, ultimate edition, so that would be really good. It is one of the best ID, I know. I have even used that. However, if you have like a community edition, I say that there will be kind of limitations, especially at we go at the higher level. So in this particular case, I do recommend that you can go for the STS Eclipse. Anyway, any ID is okay, and few people have not installed yet, so please get it installed. And yes, these are the working professionals. Same question is repeated twice, maybe. Yes, working professionals and working in non-Java. Okay, that is good. So we have like good crowd over here, and I'm really excited. I guess I had enough of introduction in like first 30 minutes. You have any questions regarding this, you can ask. If you had any questions, I would answer. Otherwise, we will get started with the core technology. Someone is saying that, can you please include the Kafka messaging between the microservices? Shariyu, probably talking about the Kafka messaging between. First of all, I'm not really teaching the microservices in this blog course. I'm just giving you the little introduction to the microservice. And then communicating with the Kafka, it will become too heavy as a part of this blog course. Yeah. I do teach Kafka. I teach Kafka even to the big data students. But in this blog course, I'm not very sure. Let's see if time permits at the end of the course, if our contents are already finished, we can consider sparing then one session on this. But I don't promise. It depends on the time that is available, right? Yeah. How do we get the registration number of the port? Yes, it is a roll number itself, correct. There is a 5-digit roll number that you will be using it for the registration number. You have to just activate your account and get started. Which ID to install? As I said that I'll be using the ID, this one, Spring Tools ID, that I'll be using it. In fact, it is already present on my machine. Let me just check where it is. So let me find out, do I have the ID somewhere? Setup. वैसे मेरे पास STS 4.3 भी था, but then I thought of like installing the latest ID. I installed it yesterday itself actually. You can see the date 24/7. I installed it yesterday, and then you can go to the ID and you can just click on that. You can create the shortcut on your desktop so that you can use it like every day, correct? And then we can have like somewhere day 01, that is workspace that you can collect, and then you can get started from there. This is the ID that I'll be using it throughout. Chalo. Is that fine? If there are no further questions, we can get started with the core Spring then. May I have some quick feedback? I hope the basic orientation of the course is clear. Anyone is having some questions? Yes, you are welcome. Chalo. Good. If this is fine, yes, thank you. Now we can go back and we can begin with Spring. We will try to understand today's session what is the Spring fundamental, like Spring core, and we will also talk about what is Spring Boot. And it is not theoretical discussion for the day. It is the actual core practical hands-on demonstration also. They will also come. So please get started. Please be ready. Let us begin with what exactly the Spring is, why exactly the Spring is, what exactly Spring brings to the table, why people are like so fascinated, and like everyone is talking about in the Java ecosystem. If you want to work, then you want to work onto the Spring. मेरे हिसाब से जितने सारे लोग अभी जावा में काम कर रहे हैं, like 99% people, they are actually working in the Spring. 1% I have left it because I know few of them, they are working into the literally core Java, maybe at the core engines and something like that, right? So the very first thing we are talking about is why we have Spring. Now, if you heard of it earlier, when people started learning Java, usually the first thing it is taught to the people about Java. Just a minute. So first thing that people talk about Java is that they say that Java is simple. Yes, it has been taught to the Java classes on the very first day that Java is simple. And then soon people realize that this was a myth, because as you start exploring Java and you start learning into the more and more details, then you realize that, oh, probably Java has got so many features. And especially if you are like new to like a Java 8, Java 11, Java 17, Java 21, Java 24, a lot many new features had been added into the Java. And nowadays, Java is no more simple language, which was there like years back till Java 1.4. Now Java is really super rich language as far as features are concerned. And Java is, yes, it is object-oriented language. But when I say that it is simple, I just always say that it is simple with respect to the languages at that time, like C++. So people say that a C++, is it good? It is good, it is great, but pointers, and then operator overloading, and then certain features of C++, people find, oh, this is very heavy features. And then when James Gosling and team, they developed Java, they said that, okay, we will try to simplify this. We will avoid these complicated topics, and we will make another robust language, which will be simple to learn. So yes, initial versions of Java were quite simple. But though Java as a syntax was simple, nowadays it is, yes, it is grown like anything. More than that, I would say that learning Java syntax itself is not enough. If you are like Java developer, the Java developer do write Java codes. They do write the test cases. They do think of the integrations. They talk about database connectivity. They talk about web applications, REST services. They talk about the big data projects. They talk about so many different features, as people were talking about. They're talking about microservices. They're talking about Kafka. So as you start getting into Java as a language can be simple, but when you are developing the production ready applications, then I can't really say that Java development is very simple. At that time, it is really challenging. And that is the reason the Spring community thought of doing it something better, where we say that Spring is a lightweight, comprehensive framework that simplifies, not Java, Java is already simple, simplifies the Java development. So whatever production ready code that you want to make it, that will be very simple with the help of Spring. Now there are a couple of points that you should take care of. The first thing I said that it is not to simplify Java, it is to simplify the Java development. And when I say that it is Java development, I'm talking about the production ready application. It is about production ready applications, something all advanced things that we are technically developing, correct? Which is very easy with Spring. If you really want, you can try to make something similar without using Spring, and then you realize, oh, with Spring it is very easy. So like people find Spring and Kafka communication very complicated, but if you start communicating with Kafka using core Java, then it is actually even more complicated directly by using a Kafka driver and all that, correct? So you realize the simplicity when you compare with the basic Java. Then we say that it is a lightweight. What do you mean by lightweight? The real main use or main library of the Spring, core Spring library, it is hardly 2 MB of library. The basic minimum feature which are provided by the Spring. And those features are hardly 2 MB library. But as Spring has got a huge ecosystem, there are so many different features, web development, database development, big data development, and so many different things. Now, as and when required, you can keep adding what extra features that you need. So basic Spring is lightweight. And then for supporting the many other technologies, they have developed hundreds of different supporting library, correct? The second one, we say that though it is lightweight, it is comprehensive. Comprehensive means it actually covers many different aspects. As I said that the separate modules are created, separate libraries are created for database connectivity, something you call it Spring Data Library, or security, you call it Spring Security. You talk about like a web applications, like a Spring Web. So many different things they are provided, and you can use them as and when required in your application. Then Spring also recommend the good programming practices. If you are learning OOPS concepts, probably you're talking about solid programming concepts. So people always keep talking about that we should follow the proper object-oriented analysis and design. We should follow solid principles, or we should use the design patterns. All these things people learn when they learn about Java, but not always people are using them effectively. Now, Spring has ensured that all these good practices they have taken care as a part of Spring framework. So it is very easy to develop, or I would say that very natural to develop the new applications which are actually following this. What? The good program practice, something you call it as a loose coupling, interface-based design. You talk about like deal with the POJO classes, plain old Java objects, etc., etc. So all good practices they are followed, and we are going to follow all of them into our applications as well every day. So why we have like a Spring, and what is so special about Spring? Let me just tell you. I'll take you to that Spring's website, and into the Spring's website, that Spring's homepage. If you go spring.io, just check out this, which is saying that the Spring makes Java, और नीचे कुछ आ रहा है, you can read it. So it makes Java reactive. Maybe it makes Java simple. It makes Java modern, and it makes Java productive. So these are the 4 words that is officially these people are telling it on their website. Correct? So we are making Java simple. Actually, we are making the Java development simple by providing the lot of integration available with the modern technologies like AI, even the old technologies like EJBs. आप लोग कहीं पर भी काम करो, and yes, Spring will help you. Yes, it is modern. The latest tools and technologies get integrated as soon as they are available. Then you can find yourself much productive, and your applications will be production ready applications. So people talk about like a scalability, people talk about the security. So all these things they are covered over it. And then there is something people talk about reactive as well. The reactive, in a very simple language, is making optimal use of the resources. Especially you talk about the threads which get created. So how well they are arranged. The reactive programming is all about non-blocking IO. So that sort of programming is supported. Something that I was talking earlier regarding Flux and Mono, right? So that sort of stuff is also available with the Spring, right? So what exactly Spring brings to the table? What are the main features of the Spring? I would say that the heart of the Spring is this, something called as IOC and dependency injection. Inversion of control. IOC stands for inversion of control, and DI is a dependency injection. It is the heart of it. In fact, today's lecture most important topic is this only. So I really do not want to explain it right now over here. Let us hold it back, and we will spend some good time onto the IOC and dependency injection in detail into the today's demo and even tomorrow's demo. The first foundation of the Spring that you should really spend your time on, and you should get the philosophy of the Spring very clear, and that is all about inversion of control. That is all about dependency injection. So today, tomorrow, we will talk about that. Then there is something we call it modular and flexible architecture. Now, what is modular architecture? I already told you. We have multiple libraries. We have separate web library. We have separate ORM library. We have separate JDBC library. We have separate security library. So all different modules are given. And then depending on your requirement, you can just choose the module that you want. You can integrate in your application and you can go ahead. And Spring remains flexible. Now, this is something real beauty of the Spring. Spring is not like very stubborn kind of technology. I recall Earlier, we were using struts, and in struts there was a concept called as a MVC. Struts, there was a concept called as a OGNL, and then struts was saying that if you want to use struts, you have to use everything of struts only. So you have to take MVC of struts, you have to take OGNL of the struts. So you have to take almost every feature of the struts. You cannot just use struts as like a plug and play only for the MVC part or only for the OGNL part. That was not supported as far as struts was concerned. So struts was coming in a flavor all or nothing. या तो मेरे को पूरा यूज कर लो या फिर मेरे को बिल्कुल मत यूज करो. But when Spring came, why Spring became popular is Spring never said that, okay, all or nothing. Spring says that, तुमको क्या करना है तुम बताओ, तुमको JDBC करना है, no worries, I will come and I will help you for JDBC. तुमको ORM करना है, no problem, you do ORM, I will come, I will help you for ORM. तुमको वेब एप्लीकेशन बनाना है, no worries, you start making a web application, I will come, I will help you for that. So wherever you need help, I am there. It is not forcing you कि you have to use all my features and each and every feature is like very integrated to each other. ऐसा नहीं है. Only the basic Spring core is required everywhere, and the remaining features you can connect as and when you need it. If you do not need it, you don't use it. It is not compulsory. That flexibility is real superpower of Spring, which made Spring very, very popular in Java domain. And then the next one is eliminating boilerplate code. Now I was talking about JDBC. You know that if you are dealing with the JDBC, you need to write same code so many times. Now when Spring come up and Spring says that, okay, I'm helping you for JDBC, what exactly Spring is giving to you? Spring says that, okay, what I'll do is that you write only your SQL query and you just tell me when you want to execute it. That's it. Rest all common work, the common work like creating a database connection, then creating the statement, actually executing the query, processing the result set, all this common work that is taken care by the Spring in backend. We, as a developer, we write only the basic SQL query and then how you are going to process a particular row. That basic logic is there, and then rest everything handled by the Spring. No need to write the same logic again and again every time. That is the beauty of the Spring. That is eliminating boilerplate code, repetitive code, so that you can focus only on a business logic. And as I was telling so many times now, I'll not repeat it. It has got extensive ecosystem. You just name it, what enterprise component you need it in your application, and Spring have support for that. You just name it. So let it be Kafka, let it be AI, let it be a deployment, let it be cloud, let it be a containerization. And yes, Spring says that yes, we are ready for anything that you ask. That is a huge ecosystem is available. And if probably you are just a student, you only focus on writing the applications. However, if you are professionals, you know that it is everyday job to write the unit test cases, integration test cases. You need to probably mock the object, and then several different things that you need to do. Spring is actually designed with this philosophy. It is a test-driven development. So testing is very much inherent part of Spring framework. Right from even the basic most Spring that you take it, only the Spring core, even with that, the testing is included. That is the beauty of the Spring. These are some high level kind of features that are available with the Spring. कि Spring क्या क्या देता है. And as I was taking you to this particular website, Spring's official website, I just thought of copying it from here. So these people have just created some nice thing which is showing you where exactly people use it, Spring in production. I literally copy pasted that plus screenshot as it is. So आप लोग Spring use करके क्या क्या कर सकते हो? In fact, you just name it. Something that everyone want to do nowadays is generative AI. Correct? So you heard of LLM. Forget, you heard of ChatGPT. So that kind of application integration, yes, we want to talk about, and we have included in our course. There is something like Spring microservices. I say that I'll give you introduction to that. So microservices are there. Then reactive Spring programming. I was talking about non-blocking programming, which makes your systems more efficient. As I said that I'll share one pre-recorded video. This is not really covered in our course, but people who are already working, just can someone tell me anyone is working with that Mono and Flux, the reactive programming? If it is there, I would like to know. Yes, someone is saying giving thumbs up. Great. But I was just doing some research and then people say that not everyone is working. That's why I didn't include it in the course. But I had one recording, I'll share with you. Then Spring Cloud. So you can write one application and your one application you can deploy into any of the cloud. So Spring has got very good integration with all your popular cloud. Let it be the AWS, let it be Google Cloud, let it be the Azure Cloud, or even Heroku and other cloud. They have the support. Spring says that, okay, I'm ready to go anywhere. Then we have like a Spring web applications. It is a Spring web applications we are going to develop. In fact, web applications is ज़्यादा popular nowadays. People are using Spring for the REST applications. So we will develop the REST services. Spring serverless. If you ever heard of something called as a AWS Lambda or Azure functions, now these kind of functions in Java, can you create it using Spring? Answer is yes. These functions are deployed into the cloud and then they run into the cloud in a serverless fashion. They are much more scalable and many times they are kind of more cost effective. So certain logic that you want to run it. And good thing is that you can write that logic once and same logic you can deploy it at 2-3 different cloud providers. That is possible. The Spring is also event driven. Now, typically you realize this event driven when you go with the Kafka kind of stuff. So where one application has sent you some sort of a data, a kind of an event, and then another application is saying that, oh, some data has been received and I want to take the action on that. But this is not only across the application. This can be done within the application also. Like you have one order component, which is placing the order. And then we have a billing component automatically updated. Oh, order has been received, so billing invoice is to be generated. So that kind of processing can be done as an event driven, and that is also very much part of Spring, right from Spring version 1.0. It is there, one of the unknown feature actually. And then there is also something called as a batch processing. Batch processing means you want to do some sort of a background work, automation work using Spring. So that also we are going to talk about. Now, out of which we are going to talk about in this course is generative AI. We are going to talk about a little introduction to the microservices. We are going to primarily focus onto the web applications with database connectivity and mainly the REST APIs. And then we are going to talk about some part of the cloud deployment. Correct? This is something we are focusing as far as this our course is concerned. But Spring is huge. मतलब इतना पूरा Spring पढ़ना है तो actually एक साल का कोर्स करना पड़ेगा. So like 2-3 months of course may not be really sufficient. And then last probably a couple of things where it covers the basic theory of the Spring. The Spring, as I was saying that the heart of the Spring is nothing but the dependency injection and Spring IOC. Let me spend little time on that. But before that, there is one diagram of the Spring. Earlier, when I learned Spring in a Spring 3.0 documentation, we had that diagram. That diagram was part of the Spring 3, actual official documentation. And then later on, Spring started growing like anything. The next features or next versions of Spring, they even stop making such kind of diagram. It was a block diagram of the Spring. And this diagram I had taken from the Spring 3 or Spring 5 official documentation. Currently, Spring version going on is Spring 7. Latest version going on is a Spring 7. But in Spring 3, Spring 5, we used to have such kind of diagram. And in this diagram, let me just talk about like couple of points at the very high level. And then we can go to the core feature of the Spring, something that we're talking about. What was that? Yes, dependency injection and IOC. And then we will get started with the actual practical as well. So Spring Core, what it is showing you, the heart of the Spring, something that I was talking about again and again, and this is nothing but Spring Core container. This is the core of the Spring. The core of the Spring, what it is providing? It is providing you feature for something called as Spring Beans, providing you the feature for Spring Core. It is Spring Context and Spring Expression Language. These are four most important things which is providing you the basic most feature. And this core container, people talk about something called as a Spring IOC container. Spring IOC container, inversion of control container, which is our next topic to talk about. So पूरा स्प्रिंग, आप लोग कुछ भी स्प्रिंग में पढ़ रहे हो, अगर आपका ये फिलोसॉफी रेडी है, if this is something that you have digested, you are ready to learn anything in Spring, and anything new that comes in a Spring, they never deviate from this basic mindset. So this mindset preparation usually take 1 or 2 weeks. I strongly recommend, please pay attention and see to it that the initial period, the first 2 weeks, do not miss the hands-on sessions, because that will give you the clarity कि exactly Spring होता क्या है and how to think in Spring. That is very important. Then I was telling that testing is inherent part. Even the basic most program that you can write, they are test ready program. So you can write the unit testing, you can write the integration testing directly. Then there are certain features on the top of this called as aspect oriented programming. What is aspect oriented programming? It tells you that your basic code is ready, your business logic is ready, it is already working in production, it is an enterprise level feature, and then you want to extend that functionality. कुछ कोड ऑलरेडी 1 साल से प्रोडक्शन में चल रहा है, अच्छे से चल रहा है, and now you have like a new requirement, you want to have some extra functionality. Now some code which is working in a production for 1 year, do you really think that in enterprises we suddenly go and start modifying that code? Do you really think that your manager ever allows you? Answer is absolutely no. In software industry, we have a principle: if something is working, do not touch that. Correct? And that is the reason, even though that code is ugly, we do not touch that, क्योंकि ये काम कर रहा है. So I want to add some new features without modifying the existing logic. That can be done with something called as a aspect oriented programming. That is one of the beautiful thing of AOP. और अगर आपको AOP अच्छे से पढ़ना है, पता करना है, तो I was saying that Java proxies. कोर जावा में AOP कैसे करते हैं? कोर जावा में AOP करते हैं by using Java proxies. Spring में AOP करते हैं by using something called aspect J library. It is there. Okay. Sorry. मैंने गलती से बंद कर दिया. My bad. Okay. Open once again. Then we have next. Then we have something called as a instrumentation. Instrumentation is probably talking about the class loading feature. It is mainly to work with the application servers, accessing the server functionalities. So uske related. Then we also have some kind of messaging. So as people were talking about like a Kafka, or few people talk about like RabbitMQ. So that Kafka, RabbitMQ, and that kind of features, it is a messaging where one Spring component is sending message to another Spring component. One REST service sending message to the another REST service. That is nothing but the messaging. Then we also have the data access. Now the data access tools, when I talk about, yes, it has got a support to the JDBC. It has got support to the ORM, Object Relational Mapping. If you heard of JPA or Hibernate, yes, it is supported into the Spring. And then we also have like OXM. Now this is not required nowadays. It is pretty old one. OXM stands for Object XML Mapping. Because earlier the old web services were XML based web services. So the data was coming in XML format. And then that XML conversion was something supported into the Spring. And apart from that, JDBC and ORM that we have, there's a transaction management. अगर आप लोगों ने RDBMS पढ़ा है तो RDBMS में you must have come across the commit and rollback, right? I'm talking about that commit rollback kind of stuff is supported over here, absolutely supported. इसके अलावा there is something called a JMS. JMS stands for Java Messaging Services. Now the Java Messaging Services is about, again, talking about brokers, messaging brokers and sending a data. JMS is one of the functionality by which we can integrate two applications. So one application is sending data, another application is receiving data. You can consider JMS as a specialization of messaging that is given below. Messaging is a concept. JMS is one of the implementation of the messaging. And then the next one, which people love, is web programming. Like that is nothing but the main enterprise application development that we have. So typically we are saying that we are into the Spring Web, Spring Servlet. ये mainly हम लोग use करते हैं. आजकल Portlet को use नहीं कर रहा है. WebSocket people are using it occasionally, depending on their project requirement. And we are going to do that. In fact, whatever we are going to talk about Spring REST, the Spring REST itself is subset of Spring Web. सो अगर आपको रेस्ट सर्विसेज कर रहे हैं तो आपको थोड़ा सा स्प्रिंग वेब आप लोग पढ़ ही रहे हो, इट इज वेरी मच इंक्लूडेड इनटू दिस. एंड देन आई वाज सेइंग दैट ये जो आपको आइकन दिख रहा है ये बेसिक स्प्रिंग का आइकन नहीं है. दिस इज अ बिट डिफरेंट आइकन. दिस आइकन इज टॉकिंग अबाउट समथिंग कॉल्ड एज अ स्प्रिंग रिएक्टिव प्रोग्रामिंग, which is non-blocking programming to make the program execution more efficient with minimum number of threads. So that is a non-blocking programming. That is Spring Reactor, which was added in a version Spring 5.0. I said that these are just a few things that you see in a Spring. But इस सब में जो most important part है, something that you should always focus on is nothing but the Spring IOC container. So it is worth we spend a time onto Spring IOC. So I guess first 30 minutes of the course, we talked about like an introduction to course in general. And then I spend another 30 minutes talking about in general why we have Spring, what Spring can do. So कौन से लेवल पे आप लोग जा सकते हो, एक जनरल ब्लॉक डायग्राम ऑफ द स्प्रिंग आर्किटेक्चर एंड ऑल दैट काइंड ऑफ स्टफ. एंड देन now we are a place where we can talk about the real practical understanding of the Spring and we can get started with the actual Spring. So far, have you got a little idea about the Spring? Any quick feedback? Is it okay? We just had an overview of the Spring so far. Right, good. It is just a very high level overview. If you are like absolutely new, you may not be like, sir, सब कुछ समझ में आ गया. It's okay. As we go ahead, many of these things we are going to develop in real in our applications. चलो, तो अब जो मैं पढ़ाने जा रहा हूं, now stay focused because this is where the Spring begins. This is where the Spring begins. This is where we need to know about Spring. What we are talking about is Spring IOC. Now, before I tell you about the Spring IOC, I'll take you with some example. Forget about Spring and all that. ये बहुत बड़े लोग हैं, बहुत बड़ा feature है. Let me just talk about something very basic or beginner level approach, basic programming. And let me talk about the traditional approach of your OOP development. So what is traditional approach? Let's say that I want to have a car and I want to drive the car. My requirement is very, very simple. What I want to do is I want to drive a car. Now, in object-oriented terms, how I'm going to drive a car? Because in object-oriented world, we say that car is going to be the object. If it is going to be the object, of course, you have to first have a class, and from the class, you have to create something called as a car object. So yes, this is nothing but my car. Car is object. But do you feel that if you just make an object of a car, that is anyway enough? Do you really think that you just create one like empty car and then you just say drive, you are going to drive it? No, because in real world that car is complicated enough. And what is the complications in a car? That this particular car is not a very straightforward object. This particular car itself is made up of many other small objects. So you have some of the object, let's say you say chassis. So you have another objects where you talk about like an engine. Then we have object like your driving mechanism, correct? We have stuff where we talk about the wheels. We have like a body, correct? And then there are many other things like seats and etc etc. So there are so many big and small objects they are made up of, and then you are making a car. And for your information, again, it is not that simple, because if you highlight even one particular engine, that engine itself is again internally made up of small objects, and those small objects can be further combined with other small objects. That is possible. Your chassis itself is made up of again many other small objects. Those objects are again further made up of other small objects. So I'm saying that all these things, making a car object itself, you are going to drain all your energy. That is fact. मतलब कहने के लिए बहुत आसान होता है, that you are saying that सर कैसे कार ड्राइव करना है, so you feel that okay सर हम लोग ऐसे कार ड्राइव करेंगे, car C is equal to new car, and people feel that okay so it is so simple, कार बनाओ और कार ड्राइव करो. But technically ऐसा होता नहीं है, इतना आसान नहीं है, because that car will be just an empty car. Then your next job would be you need to set the engine in the car. And to be frank, abhi ke liye to I'm just not even writing a code for making an engine. First, you need to make the engine, and then you need to set the engine. Not only that, you are making, let's say, set chassis. Again, you have to first make the chassis, then you need to set the chassis. You need to set the wheels. So you need to create the wheels, you need to set the wheels. And likewise, you put it all these things together and then you drive it. So what was your focus? My focus was, I want to drive a car. But when you start writing a code, what is your focus? You realize that your half of the life is now wasted in just creating this. Half of the life is wasted into this, just creating an object and initializing the object. And once object is created, once object is initialized, then somewhere you are saying that, yes, now I'm ready and I will go on a long drive. Okay. This is the real challenge of modern or like traditional OOP programming. So every object that you talk about, you have to first create the object, you want to initialize the object. That itself is a time consuming job. And we put in all our focus in making the object. And by the time the object is ready, then we find that our code is so bulky that main business logic, your main business logic is drive. Now, main business logic ke liye, like you are not even ready. You find that my application itself become very bulky. So, sir, can this be done bit better? Can this be handled in more effective manner? Answer is yes. And this particular stuff is done by the Spring. Not only Spring, there are other frameworks also who are trying to achieve something similar. So what these frameworks are saying and what they are saying, what they are proposing, listen very carefully. What they are proposing is that so far you were saying that you will create the object, you will initialize the object, and then you will call the business logic. Now, let us think of in a reverse way. I say that it is thought process now. Let us think of in a reverse way. Why don't you outsource this particular part? Which particular part? Exactly this particular part of creation and initialization of the object. Creation and initialization of object. Why don't you outsource this? Why don't you leave it to someone else? I say that this is something that will be automatically taken care. This is done by Spring. Spring says that you don't waste your time. You just tell me what kind of object that you want to create, what kind of initialization that you want to do. You just give me the configuration. So you don't write a Java code. You tell me the configuration कि करना क्या चाहते हो, and I will just take care of it. I will handle that. And then here we talk about the trial. So being a programmer, so I say that the programmer should now only focus on to calling the business logic, and not only business logic. To be frank, programmer will focus onto the calling business logic, and programmer will focus onto the configuration part. Configuration part, because Spring is going to create the object based on the configuration that you have provided. अगर आपने उसको बोला है कि इस कार के अंदर तुमको रिक्शा का इंजन लगाना है, वो रिक्शा का इंजन लगाने वाला है. अगर आपने उसको बोला है इस कार के अंदर तुमको फरारी का इंजन लगाना है, तो फरारी का इंजन लगाने वाला है. तो कार के अंदर इंजन कौन सा फिट करना है उसकी अकल स्प्रिंग को नहीं है. इट सेज दैट यू कॉन्फ़िगर and I will create the object as per your requirement. But if this is going to be done by the Spring, this is something we call it as a modern approach. And this is done by the Spring. तो Spring में ये काम कौन करता है? So I say that in Spring, this particular part is done by something called as a Spring IOC container. Spring IOC container. Now what is IOC over here? IOC full form is inversion of control. The full form is inversion of control. Now people ask the question, what exactly this IOC, what exactly inversion of control? Why the name is given as inversion of control? Because you see that in interviews, this is most common question कि Spring को IOC क्यों कहते हैं? And I guess I already given an answer to this. What is the answer to this? The traditional approach was that I will create the object and I will call the business logic. So object creation on initialization was initially my responsibility. Now Spring says that you do not waste your time and energy in creating an initialization of object, that I will take care. तो जो काम पहले हम लोग कर रहे थे, now that particular work is taken care by someone else. When that work is taken care by someone else, then that is called as an inversion of control. So you had kind of outsourced it. I'll give you some real life example. Some real life example of inversion of control. Like few years back, so people were like purchasing veggies. खाना खा रहे तो भाई हर रोज आपको सब्जी खरीदनी है. And then how people are like buying veggies? So people are going to the market and then purchasing a veggie for a day or probably for a week, and that was like a common trend. But then eventually people find it, when you go for veggies, then you like look at like 10 different places, you see कौन सा सब्जी अच्छा है कौन सा नहीं है, so you pick and then you pay, you come back, so you are taking care of all that, correct? But then eventually now people find that ये थोड़ा ज्यादा हो रहा है, let us do it simplified, and they say that okay, we will do the big basket. So you just now select in a big basket and you just say okay, sabzi आपके घर पे आ जाएगा, and then you can just cook the food and you can go ahead. So earlier the job was done by you manually, now it is done by the big basket for you. You have outsourced your work. This is nothing but the example of inversion of control. Rather कुछ लोगों ने उसके आगे और एडवांसमेंट कर दिया है, कुछ ज्यादा ही इन्वर्जन ऑफ कंट्रोल कुछ लोगों ने कर दिया है. सो आजकल तो लोग कहते हैं कि घर में हम लोग खाना भी नहीं बनाते, हम लोग स्विगी जोमेटो कर लेते. सो फाइनली खाना इज अ बिजनेस लॉजिक, राइट? So if you feel that eating is your business logic and that is something that you want to do it every time, then why are you wasting your time in like what's that, selecting food, selecting veggies, cooking them, eating them? बहुत ज्यादा हो रहा है यार. इसको और सिंपल कर सकते हैं, कैसे? जस्ट स्विगी, जस्ट जोमेटो, directly you have the food at your home and then you just eat it. So you focus only onto the business logic. You do not focus on like what is all happening in background. This is nothing but the idea inversion of control. This is nothing but the modern approach. This is nothing but the modern approach. I just mentioned that was traditional approach, and this particular approach I call it as a modern approach or like a different approach. And by the way, it is reverse of what people were doing over the years. That's is what they make it as a inversion control. Then people ask the next question, तो सर वो ठीक है, लेकिन why you are talking about the word container? इसको आप लोग container क्यों कह रहे हैं? What is? हाँ, राइट. आज कुछ डिश ऑर्डर मत करना, आज एकादशी है, सो यू माइट हैव फास्ट. लोग भूल गए होंगे. आई थॉट ऑफ लाइक रिमाइंडिंग. Coming back, what I was talking about was this is like a modern approach, and this modern approach is nothing but the inversion of control. So you understood that. Why we call it as a container? यहाँ पर container word क्या है? Probably if you are new to Java, you come across that container word for first time. लेकिन I will tell you that when I talk about the word container, container is nothing but a system. Container is nothing but a system which manage life cycle, of objects. It is there. And this is not the first container that probably you hear out. Earlier, when we were doing servlet and JSP programming, at that time, we call it as a web container. So web container is responsible for managing the life cycle of servlets and JSP. That is web container. उससे पहले we were doing applet programming. So there was like a applet container. So applets were running in a browser. It is very old days. But then again, who is managing the life cycle of the applet? Who is creating the object of applet? Who is calling the methods of applet? That was done by the browser at that time. And in the browser, we used to have applet container. Then earlier, we also used to have something called as the EJB container. The EJB container is again that piece of a framework. It is a piece of a software who is responsible for creating the object of EJBs and invoke the different methods of EJBs as and when required, one after another. ये सब कुछ वहां पर, these are all called as container. So when you come across some ready-made program or part of a program or framework which is responsible for creating the objects, destroying the objects, managing the object life cycle one after another stepwise, that particular part people refer it as a container. So Spring is a container which is managing the life cycle of the objects. Now you ask the question, sir, कौन से object की बात कर रहे हो? कौन से object की बात कर रहे हो? Officially, we say that these are nothing but Spring Bean objects. What I talk about? These are nothing but Spring Bean objects. But sir, we never come across what is Spring Bean, and we find it like, oh, ये कुछ तो बहुत ही नया, कुछ अलग लाके आए, लेके आए क्या? नहीं, नया कुछ नहीं है. It is same one. Let me tell you what is Spring Bean. Spring Bean is basically a Java class. Many times it is a POJO class with one or more business logic methods. POJO class means basic Java class with data members, with getter setters, with constructor, and then it can have one or more business logic methods. I'm talking about that. So what is Spring Bean? Let me tell you. Spring Bean is basically a POJO class. People who are entirely not people. Typically, if you are students, you may not have come across the word POJO. Let me just tell you what is POJO class. POJO is nothing but the fields. POJO is nothing but the methods. Which methods? Mainly we talk about constructor first. At least parameterless constructor. Then we have getters and setters. ऐसे बेसिक वाले क्लास को हम लोग हमेशा पोजो क्लासेस कहते हैं. in Java, plain old Java object. Typically when you start Pojo doesn't contain any business logic. पोजो के अंदर सिर्फ डेटा होल्डिंग होता है, बाकी कुछ नहीं होता है. तो मेनी टाइम्स स्प्रिंग बीन्स आर बेसिक पोजो क्लासेस with business logic methods. Business logic methods. So you consider like a bank account class. So bank account class, you have got ID, you have got type, you have got balance, and then you have constructor, you have getter setter. That is nothing but the account pojo. And then you add some business logic methods like deposit amount, withdraw amount. Now that deposit and withdraw are the additional operations that you are doing on account. And now the complete class is nothing but Java class. It is a Pojo class with business logic method. So you say that, sir, so that Java class is a Spring Bean. To be frank, yes, it is a Spring Bean, but wait for a minute. Wait for a minute. It will become Spring Bean when its objects are created by Spring a container. So just making a class is not Spring Bean. Class is not Spring Bean. For such class, whatever objects are created by the Spring container, those objects are called as a Spring Bean. And those object creation, those object initialization, those object destructions, that object lifecycle management, everything is looked after by the Spring container. That is nothing but Spring Bean. Now you really start understanding it better when you take a look at a practical example. And I believe that now it is really the time we should take not very complicated example like a car or like account. We will take that example as well. But to get started with, I want to give you some very, very fundamental, very, childish example. Maybe you can consider it, but we will start with one very basic level example. Ekdam simple example where we will try to get the actual first hand idea. Oh, what is the Spring? What is Spring Bean class? What is Spring Bean? We will see it in real. Now, there are people. By the time, usually when I'm into the live classes, it is always good idea that you keep giving feedback. And at the same time, you have any questions, feel free to keep your questions ready, because on every logical sections, I will definitely go back to the chat box. If I find some new questions are there, I will take up the questions from there. And if at all I couldn't take some question over here, even at the end of the class after 12 o'clock, usually I'll wait over here or next 15-20 minutes, we can even have like some post class, QA discussion. That is absolutely fine. So I request everyone, do not hesitate in interacting, because without your interaction, it will not be really fun in like having the class. Otherwise, it will be like I'm doing a recording and you are then later on listening the recording. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. So I'm just hoping that a lot of theory we had and like enough of done. So let us talk about the practically simple example. हम लोग कौन सा लेने वाले हैं? कौन सा लेने वाले हैं? There we are. The real simple example that I want to focus on is I'm considering one very simple class, very, very simple class, and name of the class, I'm saying that it is box IMPL class, box implementation class, a simple box. And this box will have the data members, the data member like length, data member width, data member height. And then you will have the constructors for the class. You will have getter setter for the class, right? Absolutely okay. But I said that this will make it the Pojo class. This will make it a Pojo class. Do you have some business logic for that? Yes, I do have some business logic for the class. And that business logic that I want to have is nothing but some calculate volume, or I can have some like a calculate surface area. You can add one or more business logic. And I'm saying that this particular class, I want to make it as a Spring Bean class, and I want to create the objects of this particular class as a, I want to make the objects of this particular class as a Spring Bean object. How exactly this will work? Let me take you to the practical demo. It is very simple requirement, and then slowly we will start adding the features of Spring into that. पहले एकदम जो बेसिक वाला पार्ट है वो पहले करते हैं. And as I said that code sharing utility is there, it should be working, and as a part of this course we will always go with the Maven. I already told you, so I'm not even going to create a Java project. I'm going to start with the Maven project only. The first two projects that we will create today, those will be Maven project, and then all subsequent projects we will directly create the Spring Boot project. ये पहला प्रोजेक्ट, और जो दूसरा प्रोजेक्ट हम लोग करने वाले हैं, these two projects we will create it maybe with plain Maven project, and then there onwards as we start with the real Spring Boot, this Spring Boot, whatever we are creating it as a Spring starter project, which will actually communicate to the Spring website and create a project for us. Here we have Maven project. Now please make a note of this. When we are selecting a Maven project, take care of keeping it as a simple project. So पहली चीज तो select a new Maven project from the file menu, and after file menu when you select the Maven project, do not forget to check mark this. लोग ये check mark भूल जाते हैं और बाद में कुछ तो weird screen उनके सामने आता है, right? Take care of it. Now let me click on next. Now it is asking you about the group ID. What is the group ID? Group ID is com.sunbeam. Group ID over here, we see that it is a group of developers who is developing this particular project, and usually it is your company's website name into the reverse order. So अगर आपकी कंपनी का नाम sunbeam.com है, usually we write as com.sunbeam. It is typically used as a package name. अगर इसके अंदर कोई डिपार्टमेंट है, let's say we have a department called as a Spring Boot department, so you can even write com.sunbeam.sb. I said that group ID is ideally representing Java's package name. It is a group of developers who is developing this. I'm just keeping it simple, sunbeam.com. Then artifact ID. Artifact ID means whatever project that I will be creating, that projects.jar file will be created. What would be the name of that deployable jar? That deployable jar is called as the artifact ID, correct? So I just give some simple name to that. I call it as SP01, and I can call it as XML configuration. This is going to be the name of my project. So जो finally application का जो jar create होगा, if at all I create a jar for deploying on a client machine, the name of that jar will be SP01 XML-conf.jar with actually some version added in between, like a 1.0 or snapshot version. The snapshot word over here is indicating that it is under development version. This is not yet ready for release. अगर आपने version ये दे दिया 1.0 or 1.1, then that is said to be the ready for release version, correct? However, if your name includes the word snapshot is a general convention saying that this particular project version, it is currently under development, not for the release. Then we want a name. This is where we want the name of the project in your ID, whatever ID that we have. Like currently we have ID, we say it is a Eclipse ID. So you select that. So I just quickly say that what is group ID? A group ID is going to be the package name. Usually I say that it is a group of developers or your team. It is highlighting that. Then artifact ID is this plus this plus this. ये तीन चीजें combine करके what it is making is it is making the name of the jar file, the output build for deployment that is given over there. And this one, oh sorry, my bad, this should not be the name over here. This should be again name of the project. Usually the name of the project Ideally, we keep it same as the artifact, usually. So XML conf. What is there? This is nothing but the name of project. Name of project in your ID. आपके ID में project का नाम क्या दिखेगा? That's it. Currently, we are not bothered about the parent. ये parent देख के रखना. We will talk about this parent sometime later when we start discussing about Spring Boot. जब हम लोग Spring Boot का मेवन देखेंगे तो उसमें parent word आने वाला है. But अभी के लिए I do not have any parent and I can just click on finish. That's it. This is something I need to select. So let me just go ahead. As I was saying that artifact ID or project name usually लोग same ही देते हैं. Let me click on finish. Yes, this is ready. Now inside this, अभी मैंने इसके अंदर spring वगैरह कुछ भी ऐड नहीं किया है. It is all basic stuff we have right here. Correct? Yes. Vishakha ma'am, Rahul sir, I guess someone is there on a WhatsApp group. Check. Is facing some problem. Okay, here we have next. Then we have new. First of all, a Java version. I said that on my machine Java version is 21, but currently you can see that by default it is taking a Java version 1.8, which is like pretty old version. What I want is that I want latest version. 2 minute दे दो, थोड़ा सा font increase करता हूँ, otherwise that font will not be visible into the recording later on, right? So taking care of this, I hope this font should be absolutely fine and visible to everyone. Now coming back, I want this to be compatible with Java 21. How do I make it that? So I need to start writing like a properties. And let me tell it the Java property where I'm saying that java.compiler.source is 21. So I'm telling that Java source code is of Java 21. मेरे machine में already Java 21 installed है. And second thing, it is Java maven.compiler.target. Target means जो JVM में यूज करने वाला हूं, जिसके अंदर मेरा डॉट क्लास फाइल रन होने वाला है, that JVM is also of Java 21. So source is saying that Java language version 21 and target is saying that executing JVM version 21. दोनों same है. That is fine. By the way, though I written the changes, they are not reflected immediately. Fine. Let me make it reflect. Let me make it reflect. All we will do is that right click on this, go to the Maven, and under Maven, there is something like a update a project. So I say that right click on a project, go to the Maven, and then you can update the project. Now, moment you update the project, it will read that pom.xml file, and based on the settings in the pom.xml file, it will pick up the respective Java version. So let me go and click that update project. It is asking me that what should I do? Currently, you do not read anything from that. You can just click on OK, and moment you click on OK, do you see that now it is showing me Java version 21. It is no more Java 1.8 only. Now it is Java 21. This is okay? Great. अभी तक हम लोगों ने स्प्रिंग ऐड नहीं किया. लेट इट बी. अभी तक मैं आपको सिर्फ बेसिक मेवन कैसे यूज करना है यही बता रहा था. वी विल कम टू द स्प्रिंग लेटर. पहले तो हम लोग नॉर्मल जावा का क्लास बना सकते हैं. ए आर पैकेज नेम is com.sunbeam and we were saying that we have box impl और एक काम करते हैं, we first say sp01 main. This is my sp01 main. I have created it. That is fine. You want to create that box impl class. Okay, let me go ahead and sorry, my bad. Right click, new class. We were saying that box implementation class. And into this, we were talking about data members. 3 data members. One is length. Good. We have breadth. And then we have height. If you are Eclipse developers, you people know that there are plenty of shortcuts available. Shortcuts are available. So फिलहाल के लिए let me just put one system.out.println message over here, and into this let me just say that box impl constructor is called, just for sake of understanding that what is exactly happening. I said that today's lecture is teaching you all fundamentals of Spring. Now I want to create the constructor. If you want to create the constructor, you can go to the source, and inside source you can have generate constructor using fields, right? You click on that. There is also option like generate getter setters and everything in the same menu. You can directly have it ready. You can directly have it ready. And I'm saying that in this particular case, box impl, we have int, 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 it has been called. That is good enough. Then next to that, that we have like a getters and setters. So getters and setters, again, you can go to the source window. You can talk about like a getters and setters. You can select it. Wow, your getters and setters are also ready. Now this is nothing but my Pojo class. If you want, not compulsory, but if you want, then you might go to the source and create a toString method. So even my toString method is also ready. So all the things which I'm looking for is ready. This is my basic Pojo class. So Eclipse is quite good in providing me that particular support. I just putting the function calls over here, saying that over here set height is called, and apart from that set breadth is called, and one more that I have is set length is called. Set height is called, set breadth is called, set length is called. Now whatever kind of live coding that is currently going on, expect exactly same type of live coding every day. हर रोज हम लोग कोड टाइप करने वाले, अब यहाँ से आगे, and we are going to run that, we are going to draw the diagram, we are going to understand what exactly we have done. So far it is only the Pojo class, plain old Java object, currently no business logic. But yes, I want some business logic to be added over here. So let me add something called as a calculate volume. And into the calculate volume, we can create, or we can calculate it, let's say length into breadth into height. If you want to write it for like a surface area and like any other logic, feel free to add it there. I'm okay with this. Done. And then we are saying that system.out.println, it is set height is called. एक और मैसेज यहाँ पर भी लिख देता हूँ that in this particular case I'm saying that calculate volume is called. Now forget, अभी तक हम लोग स्प्रिंग कर ही नहीं रहे, तो just recall the traditional OOP. So traditionally अगर आपको इसका बिजनेस लॉजिक कॉल करना है तो फिर आप लोग कैसे करोगे? The very first thing you should be having is, I'm saying that traditional OOP. I guess it was very simple. All we will do is we will create the object of it. When we create object of it, and then we are going to initialize it. Object बनाना हमारा काम है, object को initialize करना भी हमारा काम है. And after that, we can call the business logic, right? First, this one is there. We have height is equal to 3. And then we are going to call the business logic. I just say v1 is equal to b1 dot calculate volume. And then I can print it saying that the b1's volume is equal to v1. This is one particular way I can create an object, initialize it, and call business logic. But don't you think that there is one other way I can initialize that? We have already written a parameters constructor, guys. So why to write 4 lines of code? I can always go back and put it into a single line as well. So I can say it like this. If we can have 10, we can have 8, we can have 6. That is good. And then we can call the business logic directly. So we have v2 is equal to this, and then v2's volume also I want to display. Over. Right click, run as Java application. A simple Java application. This is my traditional OOP method that I'm doing. So I'm first creating an object. Good. We are having like setters. So initialization is done. Then we are calling business logic. We are getting the result. And for the second one, we created object and initialize it into the constructor. We called the business logic, and then we have again printed the results that everything is working well. So do we write the business logic in a Pojo class itself? No. Ideally, when we talk about general Pojo classes, it is not the business logic. Here, I just say that usually the classes that we write it into the Spring, they have logic involved. So they have data members, they have constructor, they have getter setter plus logic. So explanation के लिए simple करने के लिए I first said that we will have the Pojo, and then on the top of Pojo it is a business logic. Moment you add the business logic, it no more remains Pojo. Now it becomes a Java class which contains business logic. Right, Pooja? Now we can go a step ahead. Going a step ahead, अब हम लोगों को क्या करना है? ये सब कुछ ऐसे चल रहा है, and here you see that I'm putting my energy in object creation and initialization. I'm putting my time in creation of object and initialization. I'm looking for, अगर ये वाला काम मेरे लिए कोई और करे, कोई और मतलब स्प्रिंग कंटेनर करे, तो कितना अच्छा होगा. Exactly how it is, how cool it will be. This is where Spring comes into picture. Spring says that instead of you creating the object and initialization, I will take care of creation. I will take care of initialization. You focus only on calling the business logic and you do the operation. अब उसके लिए पहले अपने को Spring को बुलाना पड़ेगा. Okay, 100%. And how do you add Spring into the project? Currently, there are no libraries, but Maven is a Java build tool. मेवन जावा बिल्ड टूल क्या है आप लोग डिटेल में पढ़ सकते हो. इवन यस्टरडे जो मैसेज मैंने ग्रुप के ऊपर डाला था, उस मैसेज में आई हैव इवन शेयर्ड सम आई गेस यूट्यूब लिंक, जहां पर देयर इज अ ट्यूटोरियल लिंक ऑफ द मेवन वाज ऑलरेडी देयर. यू कैन टेक अ लुक एट दैट एज वेल. बट एनीवे, at the time I say that I will add the Spring Maven dependency over here. How do I find out the Spring Maven dependency? I need to go back and I need to actually search Spring Maven dependency over here. How we can do that? Let me just write. Let me find out Spring context Maven dependency. And okay, Maven dependency. आप लोग यहाँ से copy paste कर सकते हो, but I'll just go to the Spring context project. Maven. You see that there are plenty of versions are available there. This is Spring dependency, and you see that plenty of versions are available over there, out of which let me select the latest version 7.0.8. I'm going with the really latest version, and in this latest version you see, if you are onto this, pay attention. I came to this moment, I click, something is going to happen on a screen. Look at that moment I click on this, you said it is copied to clipboard, because even Maven people know that people come over here only for copying it, right? So go to that URL and you can copy from there. If you cannot copy from there, no worries. You can copy from the code sharing utility from my application. Correct? Let me add it into the dependency over here. Dependency over here, and then you can save this. Then what is happening in background? The Maven at this moment getting the data from that Maven central repository in internet. From there, it is downloading and copying it in your machine's local repository. आपके मशीन के ऊपर आपका जहां पर होम डायरेक्टरी, आपका जो प्रोफाइल डायरेक्टरी है, into your profile directory, it will create a folder by the name .m2. M2 मतलब Maven 2. So it will create a folder by the name .m2, and in that particular folder, it has added all the jars. ये सारे jars उसने इंटरनेट से डाउनलोड करके यहाँ पर ऐड किए. इसका एक्चुअल पाथ आपको यहाँ पर दिख रहा होगा. आप लोग you can take a look at even that path. You can see that, see, for me the path is c:/user/sunbeam/.m2. This is a path for me. For you, that particular path could be different. Please go and check it. This is where the jars are there, and it is not only one jar. I said context, but it has not added only context. It has taken context, it has taken core, it has taken beans, it has taken expression, it has taken AOP. All these basic things, they are included over here, and plus some extra things are also there which are useful for the performance measurement and other stuff. चलो स्प्रिंग तो आ गया अपने प्रोजेक्ट में. अब स्प्रिंग अपने प्रोजेक्ट में आ गया. नाउ इट्स टाइम दैट आई वांट टू टेल द स्प्रिंग that please create objects for me. I don't want to create these objects. I want Spring to create the object for me, B1 and B2, and not only creating object, I also want Spring to initialize the object. How it is possible? Spring says that, okay, I can create object, but you need to tell me to what to initialize it. So I was talking about being a programmer. The programmer should focus on two things. Number one thing, programmer should focus is on a business logic. Another thing that programmer should focus is on configuration. And typically this configuration is in two different flavors. One configuration is XML configuration, and the second configuration, which is said to be Java configuration, or you call it the annotation configuration. So you have two types of configuration. Now, to be frank, out of which when Spring started, version Spring 1.0, by the way, Spring is not a new technology. Spring technology was like initially developed by Rod Johnson in year 2003. So it is a technology of 23 years old technology. So at the time of 1.0, 2.0, 2.5, the Spring was following only one type of configuration, and that was nothing but XML configuration. It was very heavy XML configuration that people were using. But later on, somewhere Java 5.0 came up. And Java 5.0 came up with something called as annotations. And then people say that instead of writing configuration into the XML, we would prefer writing configuration into the annotation. So in Spring 3 and onwards version, Spring 3 and onwards version, we have this particular Java configuration. Is that okay? Done. All good? Let us continue further. What I'm trying to tell you is this. कहाँ पर गया? Going ahead, we have something called as a. अब इसके लिए पहले XML configuration का डेमो देखते हैं. Though XML is outdated, I'll still give you two demos because there are some old projects उसमें आज भी लोग वो वाले configuration check कर रहे हैं. Somehow people are maintaining some of the legacy application. तो एक का दूसरा डेमो is absolutely fine. And further, in my opinion, XML configuration में लोगों को डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन ज्यादा अच्छे समझ में आता है. अभी तक मैंने डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन आपको पढ़ाया नहीं है. आई डिडंट टॉक एनीथिंग ऑफिशियली ऑन डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन. हम लोग ब्रेक के बाद में बात करेंगे, लेकिन पहले कोड लिखेंगे. तो वो XML फाइल जो है, इट वाज देयर टिल स्प्रिंग वर्जन 3. स्प्रिंग 4 ऑनवर्ड्स दे स्टॉप गिविंग द सपोर्ट ऑफ क्रिएटिंग XML इनटू द आईडी. अब आजकल वो आईडी में ये सपोर्ट नहीं देते, अनफॉर्चुनेटली. आईडी में सपोर्ट नहीं देते, दैट इज फाइन. हम लोग क्या करेंगे, वो लोग नहीं देते तो क्या हुआ, वी विल हैव दैट सपोर्ट. मैंने कोड शेयरिंग यूटिलिटी में इसको कॉपी कर दिया. एंड द बेसिक XML फाइल का सिंटैक्स was something like this. This was a basic syntax. So what we will do is that we will create a new file, and we will create a new file, and we will add the configuration, and we will make this configuration into that XML file. कैसे? Let us go to the src main resources. Please note, Java code we written in a src main Java. The resources, XML file, properties file, YAML files, we write it them as a resources. Resources should always go to the src main resources. We can say new, and we can have file. फाइल का नाम आप लोग कुछ भी दे सकते हो. गिव द नेम biz.xml. Avoid using the special characters in the file name. Don't use ampersand or hashtag. Just keep a plain name. No hyphen to names. Okay, beans.xml. Creating into the resources directory. I just click on finish. And then whatever that basic code was, that I just copy paste it. The basic syntax is available. Now that basic syntax is available, now inside this, let me mention कि कौन से क्लास का आपको ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करना है. It is com.sunbeam.boximpl class का ऑब्जेक्ट. Done. And then which properties I want to initialize? I want to initialize the property. Let's say length is equal to 5. Purposefully I'm giving the same values. Then we have like a breadth. Again, we have like a 4. And then we have height. We have, let's say, value 3. All good. Then in B2, we again have, let's say, com dot SunBeam dot box IMPL. And then here we are taking a different approach. The first, we are saying that it is a property. The property means we are talking about like a setter methods. Getter setter method को properties कहा जाता है. So here we are saying that we are trying to set the value via setters. But जो दूसरा वाला है आप लोग चेक कर सकते हो. We are saying that the bean has got identity bit, and then the class is same box IMPL class. But here we are not using the property. Here we are using something called as a constructor arguments. And we have like a parameters constructor with the 3 arguments. Let me pass the value. The first one, it is 10. The second argument, it is 8. Third argument, it is 6. If we have put it over there. This is nothing but my XML configuration. So यहाँ पर हम लोगों ने जो initialization है, if we told Spring that do initialize, by the way, this is a comment. This one, line number 3 is comment. So where I'm telling the Spring that initialize B1 bean मतलब object, bean object using setter methods. And niche over here we are telling it again something similar, initialize B2 bean obj using not setter method but using parameterized constructor. This is something we are telling it explicitly. That is a matter of syntax. अगर आप में से किसी को यहाँ पर इस लाइन पे एरर आ रहा है, आता है लोगों को एरर यूजुअली सेइंग दैट ये एक्सेस नहीं हो रहा है और आपको यहाँ पर इसका इंटेलिजेंस नहीं मिल रहा है. देखो मेरे को इंटेलिजेंस मिल रहा है. That intelligence is available because that all intelligence is coming from the something called as the XSD file. And by default Eclipse के अंदर certain times these XSD files are blocked. They might be. अगर आपके केस में it is been blocked, please go to the window, go to the preferences, and into the preferences find out सबसे end में XML preferences are there. XML Wild Web Developer. Click on that. And XML Wild Web Developer में you can click on the checkbox. ये कब जिन लोगों को यहाँ पर बीन्स फोल्डर के लिए या बीन्स टैग के लिए एरर आ रहा है, फॉर दोज पीपल दे कैन टेक केयर ऑफ इट कि प्रेफरेंसेस में जाओ, एक्सएमएल में जाओ, डाउनलोड एक्सटर्नल रिसोर्सेस करो, अप्लाई करो, ओके करो, एंड जस्ट वेट फॉर 2 minutes. Internally it will download that XSD file from internet, and once it is downloaded, these things should be okay. There will not be any kind of warning error as well. Correct? So someone saying that, so will XML configuration is compatible with Spring 3 plus? XML configuration is there from Spring version 1.0. The very first version, it was XML configuration. Modern versions, they recommend do not use XML configuration. I repeat, modern versions recommend do not use XML configuration. We are learning it only in case you have some legacy project. You should have little idea, and you should see these 2 types of dependency injection or initialization. So let us go back. ये वाला जो मेन है, ये वाला मेन मैं कमेंट करता हूँ, ट्रेडिशनल अप्रोच वाला आप लोगों ने देख लिया है, आप लोग खुश हो गए होंगे. That is good enough, and we will have a new main. We will have new main. अब यहाँ पर that XML file has to be loaded by someone. Who is going to load that? For that, there is a Spring class called as a class path XML application context. Class path XML application context, and that class path XML application context, you can ask it the file called as beans.xml, which is present into the resources. Give the name of this particular file, beans.xml file. आप उसको नाम दे दो. Class path XML application context is a class of the Spring. I will talk about this class and then annotation configuration class in more detail after the break. Abhi ke liye, just take a look at this. And then this is nothing but how I'm talking to the Spring. And now I'm asking the Spring that I have already given you configuration. According to configuration, you create B1 and B2. You want to see something magic? Forget about whatever code I'm not writing next. Let me just run this much of code. And you see the magic. बाकी मैंने कुछ भी नहीं लिखा है, but this particular configuration is read by the Spring, and not only read, it has created the object for me. It created the object of B1 using setter based configuration. तो तीनों setter call हो गए, and it has created the object of B2 using parameters constructor. So that is the reason ये भी call हो गया. You can see that objects are actually created immediately at this line itself. So as soon as my Spring application is started, as soon as something called as application context is created, yes, objects are ready, objects are created. What all we can do is that we can just tell the Spring, give me the object so that I can call the business logic. See, what was my focus? My focus was just to call the business logic. I do not want to waste time in creating object and all that. So Spring has done that job. This is inversion of control. Inversion of control. Let me ask Spring context dot get bin and give me the bin. What ID we have given for the bin over there in XML file? In XML file, we have given bin ID as B1 and B2. Let me use that particular ID B1 right here. Right here. But the getBin method has got return type as object type. Oh, it has got return type object type. So you need to apply the typecasting. Then this is how the box B1 is created. And likewise, if you can say context.getBin, you can again see this is my getBin method. You can give B2, and then we have object. Return type is object. Return type is object. Let me select B2 there. Let me select B2 there. It will return me the box IMPL object. Let's say B2. Again, आपको downcasting करके लेना पड़ेगा. It is giving you the object. You need to downcast it. And once you do done that, let us make a call to this as well. Then let us right click and you should see the output. Exactly same output is back to the place. That's it. अभी जो आप लोगों ने यूज किया है, you have used Spring, and this is something somewhere application context is internally related to Spring container. That is related to Spring container. What exactly it is and Spring container and other stuff, we will try to talk after the break. May I have some quick feedback so far? Have you followed? Is it understood? A quick feedback, please.
Sir, this life cycle is being skipped over there. So if you're going over there for in depth, that would be going to be good for us.
Yes, we are going to talk about the life cycle as well. Today's class, not today's class, tomorrow's class. Correct? Tomorrow's class, we have a topic for that.
Thanks.
Yes, we will talk about it. Don't worry. And we will talk about in-depth life cycle of this. Today, I just want first, we will get started, make ourselves a little bit comfortable. And tomorrow, we will look at the detailed life cycle, right from Spring version 1.0 to the latest version. Okay. So let us take a break for 20 minutes. And after the break, we will continue with our class, right? Please put it sharp 20 minutes. I'll set up the timer. Let's say 20-minute timer. And then we will continue back. So welcome back. And we are continuing with nothing but this Spring. What we were talking about was we just had like file beans.xml. This beans.xml file, note, we have given into the src main resources. After compilation, this particular file will get copied into your bin folder or your classes folder. It will be copied over there. And by default, that particular bin folder is part of your class path. So this particular XML file is right now present inside your class path. Since it is present inside the class path, I'm saying that we are going to access that file from the class path. That is done by using something called as a class path XML application context. Let me just talk about what exactly this is. And there are a couple of questions regarding Spring Container also. So we have this as our main code. Let us keep that in front of us. And we also have a code of beans, कहाँ पर गया? beans.xml, which is nothing but our XML configuration code. Let us also have that code in front of us. Correct? You must have even noted the names of the classes, box IMPL and all that. The classes are like pretty straightforward. I really don't think that any explanation is needed on that. So what is exactly happened at the high level? Again, I'm not going in a very depth of it. When I'm writing a code, application context CTX is equal to new class path XML application context. Over here, we are telling that this particular application is basically a Spring application. अगर मेरे कोड में ऐसा कोई एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट नहीं होता है, कोई स्प्रिंग का एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट नहीं होता है, देन यू कंसिडर दैट इट विल बी अ प्लेन कोर जावा एप्लीकेशन. This is where the first time you are saying that this particular application is nothing but application of the Spring technology application. Now, Spring application context क्या होता है? We already talked about something called as a Spring container theoretically. You consider this like a Spring container. And this Spring container, you want to communicate via your application code. Let us say that this is my application code. This is my application code. Now my application code, how it will be able to talk to the Spring container? How it is possible? For that, what we have is nothing but the context object. What we have is nothing but the context object. So this is a context object, CTX. This context object is basically the in charge of your container. And context object is your application interfacing with the container. अगर आपको कंटेनर के अंदर से कुछ लेना है, कंटेनर के अंदर कुछ देना है, कुछ भी टाइप ऑफ इंटरेक्शन अगर आपको कंटेनर के साथ करना है, तो दैट इज ओनली वन वे, एंड दैट वन वे is nothing but application context. You can see in your code, you have said later context.getBean. You have said later context.getBean. So via context, you are going to access the functionalities of your container in your application. So via context, we are going to get the B1 bin, we are going to get B2 bin. ये सब कुछ हम लोग इसके थ्रू एक्सेस करने वाले हैं. लेकिन पहले आपका कंटेनर क्रिएट कब होता है? इनफैक्ट आपका कंटेनर तभी क्रिएट होता है जब आप लोग एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट को क्रिएट कर रहे हो. जब लोग एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट को क्रिएट कर रहे हो, एंड इन एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट यू हैव सेड दैट इट इज अ beans.xml. Pay attention, which is class path XML application context. So what it will do is that it will first of all find out the beans.xml, and internally that Spring container is ready. Spring container is ready. Now this application context is creating the container, and it is trying to create the beans in the container by reading that configuration. Now the first one is like a B1 is written, B2 is written. So internally, as soon as application context is created, listen carefully, as soon as application context is created, application context, first of all, internally creating the container, the empty container. Inside the container, it is creating the beans as per the XML configuration, that is B1 and B2. So you will find that behind the scene over here, B1 bin is created. Behind the scene over here, B2 bin is created. So B1 and B2, these bins are created. All good? When at the start of the application, जैसे ही एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्रिएट होता है, अंदर कंटेनर क्रिएट होता है, आपका XML कॉन्फ़िगरेशन फाइल पढ़ा जाता है. बेस्ड ऑन योर XML कॉन्फ़िगरेशन फाइल, इंटरनली बिन के अंदर ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट हो जाते हैं. आप लोगों ने context.getBean नहीं किया तो भी मैंने आपको रन करके दिखाया था. Done. So your objects are ready. And then later on, as a programmer, what code I'm writing? I'm just writing a code saying that context.getBean and context.getBean, I'm asking for B1 bean. When I'm asking for B1 bean, it is not creating a bean now. Whatever bean that was created over here, that bean's reference is just made available to you. Reference means I'm talking about the B1 bean pointer. It is a bean pointer, bean reference. Only the reference is given to you. Actual bean is there into the Spring container. Exactly similar way. Again, when I say context.getBean B2, is context.getBean B2, is it creating a new bean? Answer is no. It is not creating a new bean. Instead of creating a new bean, all it is doing is it is only giving you the reference. The bean is already created. It is only giving you the reference B2. So B2 is pointed to that bean. And then later on, you are making call to the B1 dot calculate volume. You are making call to the B2 dot calculate volume, and you are getting the result exactly what you are expecting. This is what is happening. मैं फिर से एक बार रिपीट कर रहा हूँ. जब कभी हम लोग एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्रिएट करते हैं और हम लोगों ने दिया है क्लास पाथ एक्सएमएल एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, मतलब आपका जो एक्सएमएल फाइल है, इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ योर क्लास पाथ. वी हैव केप्ट इट इनटू द रिसोर्सेज फोल्डर. फर्स्ट थिंग, एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट जैसे क्रिएट होता है, it is first of all creating a Spring container and giving it that XML file. Now your Spring container, it is reading your configuration, biz.xml configuration. Based on that particular configuration, it is internally creating the objects B1 and B2. That is, objects are present inside Spring container. Spring container you just consider as a logical box. It is just a memory you consider, nothing else. So inside that the B1 and B2 are created. Now once that B1 and B2 are created, basic initialization is done, context is ready. Now later on, within your application, whenever you need B1, whenever you need B2, you just ask for context.getBean, context.getBean. So whatever bean that was created, you will be getting the reference of the bean. You will be having a reference. Now you can call the methods like you are calling it in a traditional approach. This is a very baseline flow. There will be, of course, more detailed about exact life cycle of the Spring Bean that we will talk about into the tomorrow's class, where we will talk about multiple events that is going through the Spring Bean life cycle. अभी के लिए पहले कोड लिखना comfortably समझ जाओ. People who are like absolutely new, I always recommend and I always keep telling the people that पहले coding first level. Once you are okay with the coding, you are able to write the code, then you start digging inside, start understanding the internals very well. Chalo. There is a question, container and context, both are same or both are different? Both created while application context. I say that container is, you consider a component. Container, you consider as a component who is doing the job. Container, you consider like a piece of software that is doing the job. Container is like a main engine जो आपके लिए बीन्स क्रिएट कर रहा है, जो आपका बीन लाइफ साइकिल मैनेज कर रहा है, दैट इज कंटेनर. बट इस कंटेनर को आप लोग एक्सेस किसके थ्रू कर रहे हो? कंटेनर को एक्सेस करने के लिए, कंटेनर को मैनेज करने के लिए जो ऑब्जेक्ट है विच इज इन चार्ज ऑफ योर कंटेनर, दैट इज नथिंग बट द एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट. आई होप दैट शुड बी फाइन. वन इज कंटेनर, अनदर कॉन्टेक्स्ट. टेकिंग अ लुक एट दिस, थोड़ा सा अगर आप लोगों ने ठीक से नोट किया होगा, जब मैंने यहां पर टेक अ लुक एट दिस मेवन डिपेंडेंसीज, जो मैंने मेवन डिपेंडेंसीज ऐड किए हुए, डिपेंडेंसीज में डू यू सी दैट देयर आर 4 मेन डिपेंडेंसीज. वन इज बीन्स डिपेंडेंसी, another context dependency, another core dependency, another expression dependency. उसमें से आपका जो बीन क्रिएशन एंड उसके रिलेटेड जो स्टफ है, बीन लाइफ साइकिल मैनेजमेंट, दैट इज इनटू द बीन्स. उससे भी लोअर लेवल पे जो बेसिक मेन इंजन है, द मेन इंजन, द मेन कंटेनर कोर फंक्शनैलिटी, दैट इज स्प्रिंग कोर. और ये जो क्लास मैंने अभी आपको बताया, क्लास पाथ एक्सएमएल एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, और देयर इज एनोटेशन कॉन्फ़िगरेशन एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, और देयर इज अ वेब एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट. देयर आर मेनी डिफरेंट एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्लासेस एग्जिस्ट. They are all inherited from the base interface called the application context interface. Application context is a base interface. Application, I'll just mention, application context is a name of an interface. और इस इंटरफेस से इनहेरिटेड देयर आर मेनी क्लासेस आर देयर। एक दो आपको पता होनी चाहिए। वन इज क्लास पाथ, XML, एप्लीकेशन, कॉन्टेक्स्ट, one of that. The second one is there, file, file system, XML, application, context. Someone was asking about the path. अगर आपका XML फाइल आपके क्लास पाथ में, आप लोगों ने नोट किया था ऑलरेडी आपके क्लास पाथ नहीं है, beans.xml अपने रिसोर्सेस में डाल के रखा हुआ है। If it's a part of your class path, at that time you should use class path XML application context. लेकिन अगर आपका beans.xml आपने वहां पर नहीं रखा है, you have kept it somewhere like a D drive or E drive into some subfolder, at that time you want to give a path of it. If you want to give the path of it to the external XML file, then you should not use class path, then you should use file system XML application context, right? In file system XML application context, in constructor, you can pass the path d:/folder name/beans.xml, ऐसा आप लोग कर सकते हो, बट दोनों वेज में इट इज XML application context. Then there is something called as annotation config, that is our next demo. Annotation config application context जो स्प्रिंग बूट यूज करता है, एंड नाउडेज इट इज रिकमेंडेड टू फॉलो एनोटेशन कॉन्फ़िगरेशन एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, दैट इज अवर नेक्स्ट डेमो, हम लोग उसमें यूज करेंगे, वेयर वी विल नॉट यूज XML फाइल, rather we will write the Java code, and that Java code is actually creating the beans by using setters or creating a bean using constructors, right? इसके अलावा as we will go into the web applications, there will be something called as a web application context. Web application context is an abstract class anyway or interface, but then web application context or the classes inherited from that. So I'm saying that there are several different application context classes are present, and these several application context classes which are present, they are nothing but into the Spring context, and this also contains a functionality through which it can talk to the Spring Core and Spring Beans. And the last one that is nothing but expression language. We are not going to talk about it today anyway. We might be talking about it into the next week altogether. Might be next week or even next to next week. These are the four things. And I already told you that beans.xml, beans.xml, it was there already into the resources folder, और जो कुछ भी resources folder में जाता है, by default it is a path, it is a part of the class path. Since it is a part of a class path, yes, it will be used via class path XML application context. I hope this is making more sense. And you should be like visiting back to that block diagram as to understand, sir, exactly इसमें container क्या है? Exactly इसमें container क्या है? To be frank, it is Spring Core and Spring Beans is actually the main container functionality. But take a look at this. That is the reason we started with actually the diagram. ये जो block diagram था, which probably might be boring, but now you take a look at this. अभी जो मैंने आपको 4 जार बताया, पहला जार था beans.jar, फर्स्ट जार वाज beans.jar, दूसरा था spring core.jar, then it was spring context.jar, और लास्ट वाला था expression.jar. expression.jar is basically the spring expression language, और ये टेक्निकली द कंप्लीट कंटेनर फंक्शनलिटी जिसको आप लोग स्प्रिंग कोर कंटेनर कहते हो, दैट इज मेड अप ऑफ ऑल दीज 4 jars together. That is complete functionality, and out of which the context is a portion, context is an object which is in charge of this container, and context is object through which you can talk to the container, you can get the container functionality. I hope, Sagar, now this is crystal clear what exactly it is. Yeah, now that is making sense. बट आई सेड दैट एक्सएमएल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन हम लोगों ने एक डेमो देखा, और मैं आपको एक्सएमएल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन का और एक डेमो दिखाने वाला हूं लेटर ऑन विद द स्प्रिंग बूट आल्सो. बट गोइंग अहेड, पे अटेंशन, गोइंग अहेड, XML configuration is not something that we will be using it for lifetime. Ideally, we should avoid using XML configuration wherever possible. We should be staying focused onto the annotation configuration. तो सर एनोटेशन कॉन्फ़िगरेशन कैसे बनाते हैं? That is what our next demo. Exactly same code, we will do it again. No new code at all. Exactly same code. One point this I want to add it over here. Here the B1 is created by the Spring container and initialized by the setter. Listen, B1 is created by the container and initialized via setter. This particular part is referred as, इसको एक नाम दिया गया है, it is called as a setter based dependency injection, right? And something that is given below. यहाँ पर the initialization is not done via setters. Initialization is done via parameterized constructor. When initialization is done via parameterized constructor, the name is called as a constructor based dependency injection. Constructor based dependency injection. If you still have a doubt, question, sir ये exactly dependency क्या होता है? Let me simplify it a bit for you, and then we will go for the next demo. Simplify it a bit for you. Exactly dependency क्या है? Because the dependency word you will see it many times. First and foremost, Spring dependency is a different concept and Maven dependency is a different concept. They are not related to each other. People who are entirely new, please mark my words. I'm telling you, if it is what I was telling you, there are two things. One thing, Spring dependency and Maven dependency. Maven dependency is all about कि कौन से libraries, कौन से jars आपको Maven से डाउनलोड करने और आपके प्रोजेक्ट में ऐड करने. That's it. It is talking about the jars to be downloaded and to be added in a project. That is a different concept. When I'm talking about Spring dependency is altogether different concept. So what is Spring dependency concept? Take a look at this. In this particular car example, अगर आपको बेसिक ओओपी आता है, मैंने कहा ये मैं रियल नहीं बता रहा हूं, मैं सिंप्लीफाइड बता रहा हूं. सो इन सिंप्लीफिकेशन, इन अ सिंप्लीफाइड अप्रोच, डोंट यू थिंक दैट दिस इज बेसिकली द ओओपी? एंड ओओपी की भाषा में आई कॉल इट एज अ कंपोजिशन. एक्चुअली इज बेसिकली कंपोजिशन. एंड कंपोजिशन ओओपी के लैंग्वेज में वी यूजुअली कॉल दिस एज अ सिंपल आउटर ऑब्जेक्ट. Simple outer object. While this engine or wheel or something like that, all of them, we typically call them as inner object. दो चीजें आपके पास है, एक है आउटर ऑब्जेक्ट और दूसरी चीज आपके पास है इट इज इनर ऑब्जेक्ट. दीज टू थिंग्स दैट वी हैव. अब ये जो आउटर ऑब्जेक्ट है और इनर ऑब्जेक्ट है, इसको आप लोग दूसरे पर्सपेक्टिव से देख सकते हो. द अनदर पर्सपेक्टिव इज दैट आई कैन से दैट माय कार is dependent on engine. My car object functionality is dependent on chassis. My car functionality is dependent on wheels. If you are talking in these words, then I would say that ये जो आपका inner object है, you can call this as a dependency object, and you can call this as a dependent object. Where we said car has an engine, car has a chassis, car has a wheels. So this has a जो inner objects है, they are called as dependency objects. और इन छोटे छोटे ऑब्जेक्ट को बना के उसके ऊपर डिपेंडेंट जो आउटर बड़ा ऑब्जेक्ट बना है, दैट यू कॉल इट द डिपेंडेंट ऑब्जेक्ट. दिस इज अ वेरी बेसिक लेवल एट द वेरी बिगिनर फ्रेंडली अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ व्हाट इज डिपेंडेंसी. अब यही कंसेप्ट हम लोगों ने हमारे बॉक्स के लिए अगर अप्लाई किया, दो दिस इज नॉट एक्यूरेट, आई एम टेलिंग यू फ्रेंकली, अभी जो मैं बता रहा हूँ दिस इज नॉट रियली एक्यूरेट. क्योंकि जब हम लोग डिपेंडेंसी और डिपेंडेंट की बात करते हैं, जब हम लोग डिपेंडेंसी और डिपेंडेंट की बात करते हैं, यूजुअली यू टॉक अबाउट वन ऑब्जेक्ट डिपेंडेंट ऑन अनदर ऑब्जेक्ट. वन ऑब्जेक्ट डिपेंडेंट ऑन अनदर ऑब्जेक्ट. जो हमारा अगला एग्जांपल हम लोग लेंगे ना, उसमें हम लोग थोड़ा ज्यादा अच्छा वाला एग्जांपल लेंगे. बट दिस वाज एब्सोल्युटली getting started example. So though it is not 100% true, but still this should give you the little idea about dependency and dependent. So in this particular story, what exactly we had created? We had created the object of box. Object of box. Let it be the object B1 or B2. And now tell me this will be B1 or B2. It is dependent on what? this B1 and B2, B1 is dependent on, let's say, length. Then we have breadth. This is also has a relationship. So I say that box has length, box has breadth, box has height. So though not accurate, but you can try to consider that the length is a dependency, breadth is dependency, height is a dependency, and your B1 box is dependent on this. So box इसके तीनों के ऊपर dependent है, but who is initializing that? Who is initializing that? Okay, who is initializing that? I'm not initializing that now. Here it is been initialized by the Spring container. And how Spring container has initialized it? Spring container initialize it by setter method. This is something I said that it is a setter based dependency injection. In the other way around, what is this? Again, doing the initialization. But again, that initialization is done by not setter, by the constructor, parameters constructor. So you can consider it as a constructor based dependency injection. Again, another word that people come across. So why the word injection? And one like real life example that I always give to the people. Suppose that you have kind of a vitamin D deficiency. A few years back, it was I found I was vitamin D deficient. So I go to the doctor, and doctor I say that okay, I have like a vitamin D deficiency. What should I do? I know that now everyone is aware of it. So doctor, like everyone else, the doctor advised me that you should always what is that, expose yourself to sun early morning. So like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So you should be spending some time into the sunlight, and within a month or so, you will be fine. And then I was like telling the doctor that sorry, I cannot because I start early morning 6:30 for office. So by the time I reach to the office and I start work, so early morning slot is like almost booked all the time. And then I cannot be really getting a sunlight. The doctor says that that was the ideal way. But if you cannot do it in a natural method, the natural method of getting vitamin D was this. But if that natural method is not working for you, then let me add that particular dependency externally, because your body is dependent on vitamin D. So vitamin D body को चाहिए तो सही, या तो तुम naturally उसको develop करो. That is one approach, traditional approach. And if the traditional approach is not working for you, then let me inject it in your body. And when you inject it in the body, that is nothing but the dependency injection. That is a simple real life example. Exactly like this happening over here. You see that in earlier application, जब हम लोग normal code लिख रहे थे, हमारे normal code में we were setting the values manually. That is a traditional approach. But then later on, this particular part has been taken care by the Spring reading this particular configuration. It is injecting the values from outside. That's why the name is dependency injection. Is that okay? I hope this should be clear. Someone is saying that what kind of dependency? It is very simple. Just Prem, looking at the code, you should understand it. अगर आप लोगों ने setter call किया है, there are mainly three types of dependency injections. One type of dependency injection is setter based dependency injection. Second type of dependency injection is a constructor based dependency injection. And third type is nothing but field based dependency injection. There are only three: setter based, constructor based, and field based. अगर आपका setter call हो रहा है externally by the Spring container, then it is a setter based dependency injection. Then we have, अगर constructor के through initialization हो रहा है, you call it as a constructor based dependency injection. और अगर Spring container डायरेक्टली आपके फील्ड को एक्सेस करके डायरेक्टली उस फील्ड को इनिशियलाइज कर रहा है, then you call it as a field based dependency injection. We will see the example of field based dependency injection into the upcoming classes. आज के क्लास में मैं फील्ड बेस्ड डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन को कोई एग्जांपल नहीं दे रहा हूं क्योंकि उसके लिए थोड़ा सा आपको एनोटेशन वगैरह देखना पड़ेगा. आई होप दैट इज मेकिंग सेंस. हाँ, anyway you are doing injecting, that is true. Is that clear? Now, if this is done, we can go one step ahead. A one step ahead, यही चीज XML के कॉन्फ़िगरेशन की जगह पे I want to do it using annotation configuration. Annotation configuration not in the same demo. We will create a new demo. So let me quickly follow the process and please check out. I'll also answer the Pallavi's question into that next demo. Take a look at this. So I'll go to the file menu. I'm creating a new Maven project once again. All good. New Maven project once again. Again, I'll select the simple project. That is good enough. Group. That is the package name. Let's say my package name is com.sunbeam. Then we have SP02 and we will use annotation configuration. That is the artifact ID. Then name of the project is SP02 annotation configuration. You can also give the name. अगर आपको annotation configuration की जगह पे few people also call it a Java configuration. Even you say Java configuration, that is also fine because we are not going to use XML. We are going to use Java code for doing that configuration. And then I can click on finish. This is a new Maven project created. Now basic structure of the Maven project, Pallavi, take a look at this. The heart of your whole Maven application is pom.xml. The pom.xml should contain all the settings, all the build settings of your application. तुम्हारा जावा का वर्जन क्या है, तुम्हारी डिपेंडेंसीज क्या है, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, जो भी पिछले एप्लीकेशन थे, एज इट इज आई विल बी पुटिंग इट इनटू दिस एप्लीकेशन. सो सिंपली अ कॉपी एंड पेस्ट. बाय डिफॉल्ट वो ऑटोमेटिकली अपडेट नहीं करता है, स्पेशली व्हेन यू आर अपडेटिंग सम प्रॉपर्टीज और इफ यू आर अपडेटिंग सम बिल्ड लाइफ साइकिल स्टेजेस. अगर आप लोग ऐसा कुछ कर रहे हो, then it is expected that you should update Maven project explicitly. How do I update the Maven project explicitly? I can simply say right click, I can say Maven, and I can say Maven update project, so that you find that Java 1.8 is selected to Java 21. This is the basic part. And also these jars, please note that अगर आप लोग पहली बार ये वाले जार यूज करने वाले हो तो Maven will do all the downloading for first time. But for the second time, it is already downloaded. So your next execution will be very quick. It will again take it from your local repository. It will again take it from your M2 folder. तो आपका मशीन के ऊपर जो .m2 फोल्डर है, from there it will directly take it. It will not do re-downloading of that. So your execution is now efficient. अब इसके अंदर जो डायरेक्टरीज आपको दिख रहे हैं, take a look at these directories, out of which important directories are only these actually four directories. The first directory, as I said, सबसे important file is this pom.xml. Pom.xml is heart of Maven project. That is first thing. Done. Second thing, what do we have like a src main Java? src main Java should contain the Java source code. Of course, in packages, जब हम लोग एडवांस जावा में आते हैं, यू नेवर एवर क्रिएट द क्लासेस विदाउट पैकेज. सोचना भी मत. बाय डिफॉल्ट योर क्लास विल बी देयर इन सम पैकेज, com.sunbeam, और जो भी पैकेज का नाम आपको जो देना है वो दे दो, बट कीप इट इन अ पैकेज. सेकेंड थिंग इज द रिसोर्सेस. द रिसोर्सेस शुड कंटेन योर application configuration files. They should contain application configuration files. For example, it can be beans.xml. आगे जाके you will see that you will have application.properties file, or you can have application.yaml file, or any additional configuration that you want for your application that can be kept into the src main resources. Done. That is second part. The third thing, अगले जो दो चीजें, that is again same as this. Again, about the source code and configuration, it is similar. Again, source code and configuration, but now this is not related to main application. It is related to your test cases. अगर आप लोग आपके एप्लीकेशन के लिए टेस्टिंग कर रहे हो, यूनिट टेस्टिंग का कोड लिख रहे हो, इंटीग्रेशन टेस्टिंग का कोड लिख रहे हो, तो योर यूनिट टेस्टिंग कोड, योर इंटीग्रेशन टेस्टिंग कोड एंड टेस्टिंग कॉन्फ़िगरेशन that should go into the SRC test resources or SRC test Java. So this contains the Java source code and configuration files for testing. कौन सा testing? I'm talking about unit testing. I'm talking about the integration testing. Whatever you are doing over here, उसके लिए ये बनाया गया. That's it. These are the only directories. Same directories, SRC directory can also be accessed via this. You should not be really bothered about it. वो आप लोग नहीं करोगे तो ज्यादा अच्छा होगा. That is fine. And then target directory is one जहां पर आपके सारे आउटपुट, कंपाइल्ड आउटपुट जहां पर स्टोर होने वाले हैं, that will be the target directory. We do not bother about it. It will contain our .class files and all that packages created after compilation. So they are executed from that target directory. I hope that is clear, Pallavi. We are going ahead and we are saying that let us not waste time in rewriting the same code. Let us create a new package. आप में से किसी को भी कुछ भी क्वेश्चन है, समथिंग दैट यू हैव नॉट कम अक्रॉस और नॉट क्लियर, feel free to just drop me the question. I'll try to take up somewhere. Don't worry. Then we have like a box IMPL. I'm not rewriting it. I'm just copy pasting it from the previous application. मैंने ऊपर से कॉपी किया, नीचे पेस्ट किया, that is ready. And now let me also create our main class. In my main class is sp02 main, ये main class. लेकिन in this project I do not want to go for XML configuration at all. हमको XML configuration बिल्कुल नहीं करना चाहिए. तो सर हमको क्या करना चाहिए? Let us go ahead with this. What we should do is this: add new class, and we are doing now Java configuration. We are doing annotation configuration. We are doing Java configuration. We are doing annotation configuration. So annotation configuration के लिए we create a separate Java class which will configure our Spring Beans. जो कोड हम लोगों ने XML में लिखा था, XML का कोड अपने सामने रखना, जो कोड XML में लिखा था, something similar, instead of XML I want to do it in Java. I want to do it in Java, and that particular part we are going to do it over here. Now you ask the question, how do I make it as a configuration class? The first thing to make it as a configuration class, use @configuration. ये very first thing. @configuration, make it as a configuration class. And then inside that you want to create two beans. One is a B1 bean, another is B2 bean. Exactly same जो XML में किया था वही यहाँ पर वापस करने वाले. So to create a bean, there is the method. There is an annotation what is a bean, and you create the method for that. Let's say box IMPL B1. जो मेथड का नाम होगा बाय डिफॉल्ट इट विल बी योर बीन नेम. जो मेथड का नाम होगा वही आपका बाय डिफॉल्ट बीन नेम होगा. कीप दैट इन माइंड. एंड देन वी हैव बॉक्स बी इज इक्वल टू box IMPL bean is equal to new box IMPL, and again I'm setting exactly same values. Once again, length is equal to 5, b dot set breadth is equal to 4, b dot set height is equal to 3, and then this one we will return it. So here how you have created object, you have created an initialize object by using parameterless constructor plus length, breadth, height. You have set it via setter. This is again an example of setter based dependency injection. And then we have @bean. Again I'm creating one more. Method name will be treated as your bean ID, and then I want to create the object box IMPL B is equal to new box IMPL, and you mention 10, 8, 6, and let me return B again. Over here we are doing it via constructor. So this is basically a constructor based dependency injection. So जो हम लोगों ने XML में लिखा था, please compare with the XML. वही चीज अभी हम लोग जावा के कोड में लिख रहे हैं, दैट्स व्हाई you call it as Java config. And if you are using that annotations for that, that's why you can call it as a annotation configuration. That is good enough. Now, how do I tell Spring container that you create the object using the Java code? Spring container को बताना पड़ेगा. अब class path XML application context will be of no use. Now over here, you need a new type of application context called as a annotation config application context. And this annotation config application context, I simply say new annotation config application context, but where that configuration is given, which class is basically the configuration class. तुम्हारा configuration class कौन सा है? ये वाला class है app config. So let me pass its metadata. Let me pass its metadata saying that app config dot class. In Java, whenever we are using class name dot class is representing a metadata. This is where reflection come into picture. Class name dot class is nothing but the metadata. तो मैंने उसको बता दिया है कि जो कुछ भी बीन्स तुमको इस क्लास में दिखेंगे, you are supposed to create those beans. Let me just run it and you see the output first quickly. You find that moment I run the application, you see that, oh, beans are already created. This was B1 bean is created, B2 bean is created. So whatever bean methods, number of bean methods, you have written it inside this, all those bean methods, objects are created. These are the beans are ready, nothing else. And now you can continue the rest of the code will go exactly same the way we had written it into the first one. All you need is you access the object and you call the business logic method. वो वाले part में कुछ भी change नहीं है. That will remain as it is. No change into that. No change into that. That particular position will remain exactly same. You had this, right click, run as Java application, and you should see exactly same output once again. And this is for my second application as well. So I just told you that there are two types of dependency injections. One is setter-based dependency injection, and the constructor-based dependency injection. We did it in XML, exactly same injection. We did it into the annotation configuration also. And whatever application that we wrote, it was one of the simplest ever application. Right? Now there are a couple of questions. Let me first handle the question number one. One question, if you have any questions, please post those questions into the chat window. On a logical break, I will go to there and I will look at the questions one by one. तो पहला क्वेश्चन जो है, that is good. हम लोग कौन सा यूज करेंगे? We have setter based dependency injection, we have constructor based dependency injection, we have field based dependency injection. These are the types of dependency injections. I already told you. One is setter based, another is constructor based, and third one I call it as a field based. Field based हम लोग आज नहीं पढ़ने वाले. Let us not worry about that. So there are two. Actually, we learn it right now: setter based and constructor based. So in first case, what is happening? In first case, typically you are calling the parameter-less constructor. This is parameter-less constructor. And the second thing, you are calling setters for initialization, right? In constructor base, we are typically calling parameterized constructor. And that parameterized constructor is doing all my initialization. That's it. It's very simple. You ask the question, so which one should be used? अगर आप लोग ठीक से नोट करते हो तो सेटर बेस में क्या होता है? पहले आपका ऑब्जेक्ट बनता है, पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल होता है, और उसके बाद में आपका सेटर कॉल होता है. तो टू बी फ्रैंक, यहां पर टोटल 3 स्टेप्स आर इन्वॉल्व: ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएशन, पैरामीटरलेस कंस्ट्रक्टर, एंड देन सेटर. एंड इफ देयर आर मल्टीपल सेटर, देन मल्टीपल सेटर्स. नॉट ओनली वन सेटर. हमारे इस केस में टोटल 3 सेटर कॉल हुआ है: सेट लेंथ, सेट ब्रेड, सेट हाइट. Now, when you go for constructor base, what is happening? In constructor base, you have only 2 steps involved. Step number 1, object is created by the JVM, and then parameterized constructor called by the Spring container. And by the way, you are calling only one constructor. You are not even calling multiple constructors. जितने आर्ग्यूमेंट आप लोगों ने दिए है, so you have passed constructor argument index 0, constructor argument index 1, constructor argument index 2, or in annotation file we have given 3 arguments. So over here the 3 argument constructor will be called and directly initialization will be done. Which one you feel it more efficient? Of course, I need not to tell you that this particular one is more efficient, and maybe for this reason this is recommended by the Spring people. तो स्प्रिंग के लोग हमेशा ये कहते हैं कि जहां तक हो सके योर फर्स्ट प्रेफरेंस शुड बी कंस्ट्रक्टर बेस्ड इनिशियलाइजेशन, सो दैट मैंने जहां तक हो सके कहा, बिकॉज देयर आर सर्टेन सिचुएशंस वेयर कंस्ट्रक्टर बेस्ड इनिशियलाइजेशन विल हैव सर्टेन लिमिटेशंस. तो जहां जहां पर पॉसिबल है वहां वहां पर योर फर्स्ट चॉइस should be constructor based initialization, because it create your objects in probably bit faster way. There are not multiple setter calls, multiple method calls are involved, right? तो ये आप लोगों ने फॉलो करना चाहिए. I guess that answered the question. Is that clear? इसका क्वेश्चन था प्रेम का, राहुल का क्वेश्चन. I hope Rahul that is clear. Then the next question, we can create the number of bins. Is there any limitation for the bins creation? Absolutely, there is no limitation. The limitation is only one, how much memory that you have. So you can create n number of objects. If you have like enough of RAM, you can create enough of objects. Just remember that all those objects will be tracked, will be kept, will be referenced by the Spring container. तो जितने ज्यादा आपके पास ऑब्जेक्ट्स होंगे उतने सारे के सारे स्प्रिंग कंटेनर याद रखता है. नन ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट इज डायरेक्टली गार्बेज कलेक्टेड. जस्ट रिमेंबर दैट. So you can create as many objects that you want, provided you have enough of hardware resources, you have enough of RAM. Otherwise, there is no limitation. And second point to remember is that if you are creating thousands of bins, then your initialization might be a bit slower. वो कैसे हैंडल करना है, that we can talk about sometime later. But then, yes, it will be kind of bit slower if you are creating thousands of objects just at the beginning. That is to be worried about. Chalo. Yes, surely wherever there are like interview based questions or something like that, I will tell you that ye questions hai. I already told you there's a first very important interview question is that why Spring container is called as a IOC container. That was actually the first question. And second thing that we were talking about, like what is dependency injection, number 1, and number 2, dependency injection and what exactly it is doing. What are the types of dependency injection? That is second question. I'm just going back, repeating it once again. What I was saying is that in this particular case, we have annotation configuration application context. And in this annotation configuration application context, we have app configure class. So here we are telling the Spring, or we are telling this application configuration application context. Application context है तो it will create the container, Spring container. But Spring container को configuration मिलेगा कहाँ से? Not from the XML file. So from where it will get that? It will get it from this app config. So whenever I'm writing app config.class, I'm passing the metadata of app config class. I'm passing the metadata of the app config class. This metadata of the app config class will be received by the application context and then your container. It will read that particular configuration. It will read that configuration. It will find out इसके अंदर कितने methods है. जो methods @bin वाले methods हैं, जितने मेथड उसको मिलेंगे उतने मेथड्स को वो कॉल करेगा और उसके जो भी ऑब्जेक्ट्स होंगे, those objects are internally stored as a Spring Bean objects. सर उसको ये कैसे पता चलेगा? This is where reflection come into picture. This is where reflection come into picture. So this one is internally using reflection to access कि अंदर कौन कौन से @bin methods है, और जितने bin methods है, all those bin methods, जितने सारे bin methods है, all those bin methods will be will be called one by one. Objects will be created at the beginning itself. I guess that makes sense. Then someone is saying that about the folders where we also have extra folders for environment, secret folder, for API test or Spring and all that. वगैरह 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 वगैरह. To be frank, yes, we have that. जब जरूरत पड़ेगी, at that time we can create them separately. But almost all those folders, you will put it under resources. ये जो सारे फोल्डर्स आप लोग बाद में क्रिएट करते हो, मेनी ऑफ दैट इफ दे आर कॉन्फ़िगरेशन related files, all your configuration related files, they should go in a subfolders, and they are not the standard folders of Spring Boot or Maven. They are application specific, जो आपके कंपनी ने डिसाइड किया है कि हम लोग इस नाम का फोल्डर बनाएंगे और इस नाम के फोल्डर के अंदर हम लोग ये रखेंगे. That has nothing to do with the Maven और Spring. वो आपकी कंपनी का डिसीजन है. वैसे आप लोग चाहो तो यहाँ पर आप लोग अलग अलग फोल्डर क्रिएट कर सकते हो अंडर रिसोर्सेस, एंड यू कैन कीप द डिफरेंट डेटा. I hope that is fine, Bilal. Sometimes we keep application YAML file in environment default folder. Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. So we have like a test environment different. We have this, that particular concept. Typically, we call it the profiles. We will talk about it sometime later. Can you give the short introduction to the reflection? To be frank, it will be too much to give a short introduction to the reflection right now, because then it will be a probably very overwhelming topic. I would say that short introduction matlab it will take 1 hour actually. So there is no point in like talking about that. But just give me a minute and I'll share you some information immediately. मैं बाद में ग्रुप के ऊपर डालने वाला था, लेकिन if you want it, I can send it immediately. Just hold on. I'm just finding out. Found, paste. You can check that. There are total 6 videos and all 6 are super important. In each place there are 2 divisions. पहला वीडियो कंसेप्ट का है, दूसरा वीडियो प्रैक्टिकल का है. रिफ्लेक्शन और उसका प्रैक्टिकल, एनोटेशन उसका प्रैक्टिकल, प्रॉक्सी और उसका प्रैक्टिकल. नाउ पीपल हु रियली वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड इंटरनल्स ऑफ स्प्रिंग बूट, सर अंदर क्या होता है, तो पहले दिस इज द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट वी शुड बी रेडी विथ. ओके, एट द मोमेंट आई गेस दिस शुड बी फाइन. आराम से पढ़ो, अभी पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. लेक्चर खत्म होने के बाद में देन यू कैन वॉक थ्रू दैट, राइट? दैट शुड बी हेल्पफुल. कमिंग बैक, you can watch them in a 2x speed. जल्दी हो जाएगा, no worries. So I was talking about annotation configuration and then how annotation configuration works. I guess I have just covered all the questions that are available so far. Our Spring application start running from the main method, correct? Mostly interviewer asks the question about more idea on that. But to be frank, अभी तो इसके अंदर main method ही call होगा, because that has nothing to do with the Spring. Every core Java application is starting with the main, right? That main is the entry point of my Java application. So my JVM always make a call to the main. हाँ, लेकिन main के अंदर पहला काम क्या होता है? The very first job the main has got is nothing but creating the application context. So we are creating the application context over here, which is internally creating a container, following the configuration, creating the beam, and once that context is ready, then our rest of the application continues. And in our rest of the application, wherever we need, we simply use context.getBean. And once we get the context.getBean, we are getting the object. We are calling the business logic method as of normal Java application. इसका आउटपुट काफी सिंपल है. हाँ, प्रोबेबली जो इंटरव्यू में क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है, इट इज मोर अबाउट स्प्रिंग बूट हेलो वर्ल्ड एप्लीकेशन, विच इज प्रोबेबली आवर नेक्स्ट डेमो. अगले डेमो में वी विल टॉक अबाउट द स्प्रिंग बूट हेलो वर्ल्ड एप्लीकेशन. वहां पर एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए बहुत कुछ है, यहां पर ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है. In annotation configuration application context, how we do this? Okay, this is nothing but constructor based DI. Constructor based DI का मतलब ये होता है कि in this particular case we are creating a bin using parameters constructor. Anyway, we are going one more step ahead. There was something relevant. There was one more question pending. Yes. There was one more question pending. Someone was asking the question, what is the difference between application context and XML bin factory? ऐसा कोई तो एक क्वेश्चन किसी ने तो पूछा था, what is the bin factory and all that. अब उसके लिए आपको थोड़ा सा जावा डॉक्स कहीं पर तो ओपन कर लेना चाहिए. So if I just go to the Java docs and I'm saying that it is Spring application context docs, actual official docs I'm talking about. This is my official docs. It is application context. And application context, I just said that application context is central interface to provide configuration for your application. And then this is the one who will internally communicate with your Spring container, who will create the bin. You can get the bins from the Spring container via this. That is all okay. This is the purpose. But then you find that this application context interface itself is inherited from bin factory interface. Application context itself is inherited from the bin factory interface. We have bin factory interface. And this bin factory interface is talking about the root interface for accessing the Spring Bean container. तो अगर आपको Spring Bean container को एक्सेस करना है तो जो मिनिमम फंक्शनैलिटी जो इंटरफेस में होती है, that is nothing but the bin factory. Bin factory is the first level stuff. And you can consider application context is a kind of abstraction over your bin factory, or application context itself is a specialization of bin factory. The basic minimal stuff is provided by the bin factory. Basic minimal stuff is provided by the bin factory. And then on the top of it, the additional functionality is given by the application context. Let me just tell you, अभी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि इसके जो डेमो दिखाने के लिए जो क्लासेस चाहिए थे, all those classes are kind of deprecated. Classes are deprecated. Interface is still there, but classes are deprecated. जब हम लोग Spring 3 में थे, in Spring 3 we had one separate class. We had separate class called as XML bin factory. XML bin factory was a class which was inherited from something called as a bin, which was inherited from something called as a bin factory interface. Bin factory interface, उससे inherited, we had a class called as XML bin factory class. Instead of creating application context, आप लोग directly bin factory use करके ये सारे functionality कर सकते थे. Even over there at that time we used to write the code like this. So factory is equal to XML bin factory. मैं rough code लिख रहा हूँ. New I should write it. Nowadays I cannot show you that demo because that class is outdated. Nowadays it is strictly you should not go for that. ये आपने नहीं करना चाहिए. And let's say you have a file bins.xml that you are passing it, and then you can actually call it b1 is equal to context.getBin, and you are passing b1 typecasting code. You can add it, and then you can call the business logic methods. This is something that we were doing. The primary difference that I see, listen carefully, factory में और application context में primary difference that I see is that whenever we were dealing with the factories, सारे ऑब्जेक्ट्स इन एडवांस नहीं क्रिएट होते थे. सारे ऑब्जेक्ट्स इन एडवांस क्रिएट नहीं होते थे. सो व्हेन फैक्ट्री इज क्रिएटेड, आई एम जस्ट राइटिंग इट, when factory bin factory object, when bin factory object is created, it creates Spring container internally. That is fine. The configuration, however, no Spring Bean is created immediately. No Spring Bean is created immediately. When programmer, user मतलब programmer actually यहाँ पर, when programmer calls context.getBin, for first time for any bin, first time, then corresponding maybe B1 bin is created. In other words, I would say that this means that it is kind of a lazy initialization. जब जरूरत पड़ेगी तब bin को create करो. Do not create all those bins in advance immediately. That was a format followed by XML bin factory. That was format followed by the original bin factories. बाद में they have modified it and they said that this is too primitive and we want something more advanced features. And that is the reason they come up with the new interface altogether. What is the new interface altogether? I told you it is application context interface, which is inherited from that bin factory. So this is specialization, and we have that class path, XML, application context, and etc. etc. ये सारी चीजें अलग अलग application context बनाए गए. But in application context, you will find that it is by default doing eager loading. Eager loading का मतलब है when context is created, container is created, Spring container is created, and not only container is created immediately, and all Spring beans in configuration are also created. This is eagerly. So this is eager loading. इसके अलावा application context provide you some higher level features. Like there were features like what is that? The feature like localization, multi-language support. So localization support, internationalization support. So that support was added in application context. The event management support that is also available. So I'm saying that all these things that will be available immediately, that will be available with the application context. So that is a basic difference between application context and bin factory. ये किसने सवाल पूछा था? My PPTs are also shared. My screenshots will be also shared, and even the diagrams that I have drawn for you, even those will be shared. At the end of lecture खत्म होने के बाद में give me half an hour. उतने टाइम में Git repository के ऊपर सब कुछ आ जाएगा. So no worries. Is this okay? Clear? Someone ask a question.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine. Great. Now, if this is done, so is this correct answer? Container is a instance of application context which manages the bin lifecycle. Container is not an instance. Container is internally an entity. It is a logical entity which is actually doing the job. An application context is in charge of the container. So I will not use the word, it is an object of that. I will just say that it is a logical entity, and that logical entity will be वो जो logical entity है, that is managed by application context. So application context is more into the management. Is that okay? That is, may I have some quick feedback so far? Are you people okay following that? Chalo, wonderful. If that is clear, yeah, yes, sure. The recordings, जो कुछ भी होगा, 4 घंटे का लेक्चर होता है तो 4 घंटे का रिकॉर्डिंग प्रोसेस होने में टाइम लगता है. You take it ideally 2 to consider that 2 to 3 hours is minimum required after the lecture ends. Zoom meeting बंद होने के बाद में वहां से आगे. Somehow bin factory is created on demand object, but application context do it at the beginning. Yes, absolutely correct. Akash, you are right. It will consume more RAM in advance. यहाँ पर भी आप लोग उसको lazy evaluation करवा सकते हो. Option is available, but the default nature of application context is eager. Default nature of application context is eager, and default nature of the factory is lazy. Basically, to be frank, nowadays you should not keep learning about bin factory. Now, someone who is just preparing for interview, और आजकल इंटरव्यू में भी लोगों ने पूछना बंद कर दिया है कि what is the difference between bin factory and application context. 10 साल पहले this used to be the common question. not really nowadays, I guess. Anyway, now we can go one more step ahead. This is fine. We are creating this. So being this, let me just go back. What we said is that ये सब कुछ अभी आपके सामने है. Let me just go back and quickly revise what exactly the container part is, what exactly this dependency injection is, so that we are ready to move on to the Spring Boot style. We already talked about this, and we were talking about this. It is a quick revision of what we did practically. Yes, Sharayu, that is correct. We will talk about the scopes next week mostly, right? IOC. IOC का full form है inversion of control. IOC is a design principle where object creation and dependency management are controlled by a framework instead of the application code. Earlier, we were doing it manually. Now it is handled by some framework like Spring Framework. One. The traditional old approach क्या था? Old approach था manual object creation where application create and manage the dependency. Simple language, it is the role of the programmer. You create the object, you initialize the object. And then it was a tight coupling between the object, because one object you are attaching to another object, and then that is tightly coupled. Finally, whichever object that you have passed, that object is injected into the dependent object. So it was kind of a tight coupling. But then Spring approach is nothing but the inversion of control approach, because now programmer is not doing object creation and initialization. Now object creation and initialization has been outsourced to the Spring. Spring container create the object, and Spring itself will initialize and inject the dependencies. So जो काम हम लोग कर रहे थे वो काम Spring कर रहा है. That is inversion of control. I give you real life example of Swiggy Zomato. खाना खाना बिजनेस लॉजिक है, लेकिन खाना बनाएगा कौन? मैं बनाऊंगा या फिर रेस्टोरेंट बनाएगा? नो, दैट इज जस्ट इन्वर्जन ऑफ कंट्रोल. किसी ने बनाना चाहिए, दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट, फिर हम लोग खाएंगे. देन वी हैव डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन. दिस इज ऑल्सो इंटरव्यू क्वेश्चन. आईओसी और डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन में डिफरेंस क्या होता है? आर बोथ एग्जैक्टली सेम? नो, दे आर रिलेटेड. दे आर नॉट सेम, बट दे आर रिलेटेड. पे अटेंशन. आईओसी इज अ कंसेप्ट, इट इज अ डिजाइन प्रिंसिपल. ये फिलोसॉफी है. But how that philosophy has been achieved? That philosophy has been achieved by using dependency injection. So dependency injection is a technique where required objects, dependency injection is a technique where required objects are provided to a class from external source instead of the class creating them itself. अब क्लास उसको क्रिएट नहीं कर रहा है, आपका प्रोग्राम उसको क्रिएट नहीं कर रहा है, बट उसको बाहर से इंजेक्ट किया गया है. यू रिमेंबर माई एग्जाम्पल ऑफ विटामिन डी. अगर आप लोग सनलाइट एवरीडे लेते हो तो योर बॉडी विल क्रिएट विटामिन डी अंडर योर स्किन. इट विल टेक केयर ऑफ इट. दैट इज द नॉर्मल नेचुरल ट्रेडिशनल अप्रोच. बट इफ यू आर समहाउ नॉट एबल टू डू दैट, देन यू हैव टू इंजेक्ट इट फ्रॉम आउटसाइड. तो जहां पर क्लास के पास उसका लॉजिक नहीं है, लेकिन ये बाहर से उसको सप्लाई किया गया है, दैट इज रीजन इट इज कॉल्ड डिपेंडेंसी इंजेक्शन. टू बी फ्रैंक, it is just a setting data members, but the technical name over here is dependency injection. Spring IOC container manages the life cycle of the Spring beans. IOC container is responsible for managing the life cycle. अभी के लिए लाइफ साइकिल में सिर्फ इतना समझो कि ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करने का काम भी कंटेनर का है और ऑब्जेक्ट डिस्ट्रॉय करने का काम भी कंटेनर का है. For time being, this much is enough. Tomorrow we can talk about in detail what exactly the life cycle is. And then Spring Bean is a normal Java object created and managed by the Spring container. So people are like, sir, इसमें से exactly bean कौन सा है? Exactly bean कौन सा है? You are asking me the question. I said that ये जो तुम्हारा B1 है, B1 is a bean, B2 is a bean. And why it is a bean? So sir, earlier when we wrote a program over here, in this program over here, B1 was a bean, B2 was a bean. No, here B1 and B2 were not bean, because in this case, the bean, that object was created by us. Object was created by us in the previous demo. But over here, it is created by the Spring container, right? Over here, it is created by the Spring container. So in this situation, B1 and B2, these are Spring Beam. I guess, Suresh, I told the difference. The difference is that IOC is a concept. IOC is a philosophy, inversion of control. लेकिन वो inversion of control करने के लिए मतलब earlier I was creating an object, I was initializing it. Now someone else मतलब Spring Framework is creating object. Spring Framework is initializing it. And how Spring Framework is initializing it? By calling setter externally or by calling constructor externally. ये जो कुछ भी वो कर रहा है externally passing the values to the setter or to the constructor, that particular stuff is called as a dependency injection. You consider IOC is a concept, dependency injection is a mechanism through which that concept is implemented. I repeat, IOC is a concept and dependency injection is a mechanism through which that concept is implemented. I hope that should be the good mental model, right? Chalo, fine. So we were talking about this and now you are okay with this. इतना स्प्रिंग कोर काफी है, दैट इज द बेसिक फाउंडेशन. नाउ वी विल गो अहेड क्योंकि अपना मेन कोर्स स्प्रिंग बूट का है. तो आई शुड बी बिफोर लेक्चर एंड्स टुडे आई वांट टू हैव अ लिटिल इंट्रोडक्शन टू द स्प्रिंग बूट आल्सो. तो फ्रॉम स्प्रिंग टू स्प्रिंग बूट, व्हाट इज एग्जैक्टली न्यू, व्हाट इज समथिंग स्पेशल. क्योंकि यहां से आगे फ्रॉम टुडे ऑनवर्ड्स, दिस डेमो ऑनवर्ड्स, वी विल बी ओनली क्रिएटिंग स्प्रिंग बूट डेमोस. We will not create Maven project once again. We will create directly the Spring Boot applications. तो Spring Boot basically होता क्या है, ये पहले आपको समझना है. I guess last diagram you should take a look at. And in last diagram, I was telling you that Spring has got too many things here. Spring has got so many libraries, so many functionalities. It has got Spring Beans, what is that? Spring Container, Spring Testing, AOP, instrumentation, messaging, Spring Web, Spring Data Access. Oh, so many functionalities are there. And by the way, these are just a few one. I have not talked about Spring Reactor, Spring Security, Spring Batch, Spring Data. Oh, there are so many functionalities that these people have developed. And then real pain of the Spring, real problem of the Spring. Spring is good. It is definitely better than the plain Java. But the real trouble as you start writing the real world application, you will face is that सबसे बड़ा problem है configuration. Problem number 1. I'm trying to tell you the limitations of Spring. So what are the limitations of the Spring? The very first limitation of the Spring framework के limitations. Limitations is nothing but configuration. Configuration becomes the first problem. Number 1. Done. Then the second problem, we are talking about configuration. Sir, configuration abhi to bahut hi simple tha. We created XML configuration, we created like app config, so we wrote like this. It was only the hello world. आगे जाके जो आपको configuration करना है, you want to do the configuration of the web applications, you want to do the configuration about the REST APIs, you want to do the configuration of the database, you want to do the configuration of the security, you want to do the configuration, so many different things. And trust me, as you go ahead, the configuration itself is a nightmare. Whether you go for XML, whether you go for annotation, दोनों में वाट लगती. I still remember my old days of the plain Spring. तो Spring में जब हमको एप्लीकेशन शुरू करना होता था, एक नया प्रोजेक्ट, अभी चलो एक नया प्रोजेक्ट बनाते हैं, एक बेसिक विथ सिक्योरिटी, एक छोटा सा प्रोजेक्ट बना लेते हैं, करेक्ट. तो वो बेसिक प्रोजेक्ट का सेटअप मतलब बेसिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन करने के लिए विथ वेब, विथ ORM, विथ सिक्योरिटी, दैट बेसिक मोस्ट सेटअप करने के लिए वी यूज्ड टू टेक हाफ एन आवर ओनली कॉन्फ़िगरेशन. And then once basic configuration is done, then somewhere you start writing your first controller, you start writing your first logic, programming logic. So आधा घंटा तो आपका नॉर्मल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन में जाता था, and that was really tedious job. So that was the biggest limitation. Problem number 1. Then problem number 2. Problem number 2 that we had was a deployment. A deployment is kind of another problem, and deployment is a serious problem of Spring. how do you deploy the Spring web applications? Spring, not Spring Boot. To deploy the Spring web applications, all you need is web server like Tomcat or application server like JBoss. So पहले web application बनाओ and then पहले Tomcat को run करो. Inside Tomcat, you copy your application. फर्स्ट टॉमकैट रन करो, उसके अंदर इसको कॉपी करो, या फिर जेबॉस रन करो, उसके अंदर कॉपी करो, फिर उसको उसके साथ में अटैच करो, देन यू रन इट. द प्रोसेस वाज नॉट दैट स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड. एंड देन you realize that these kind of web servers and all that, they are not at all friendly with the modern technology. You know what is modern technology? The modern technology was kind of a containerization. Containers. You heard of like Docker and all that. So this is not really the Docker friendly, container friendly option ही नहीं था. So your deployment was another big trouble. I'm telling you the big troubles of Spring framework, the real hurdles. Hurdle number 1 is configuration. Hurdle number 2 is nothing but your deployment, your containers. This is a problem. And that XML configuration was always a problem that for the people. So to solve this particular problem, Spring people say that let me bring it to the next level. कुछ तो अच्छा करना चाहिए. And we have like a several different project. एक मिनट रुको, और एक बड़ा problem रह गया. Another big problem that was there is called as the jar conflicts or library conflicts. What is jar conflicts or library conflicts? My Spring project version is Spring 7, for example. But corresponding security version is Spring security project version is 6 point something. Now my Spring project version 7 point something may or may not be compatible with security 6 point something. And ये compatibility आपको पता नहीं चलता था जब तक आप उसको सचमुच करके नहीं देखोगे. It was that complicated process. Please note that Spring security is altogether different project. Spring is altogether different project. Spring data is altogether different project. And you are not very sure which project version, कौन सा वर्जन कौन से वर्जन के साथ compatible है. आगे जाके लेट से आपको MySQL यूज करना है, तो MySQL का ड्राइवर कौन सा वर्जन मेरे इस स्प्रिंग के साथ अच्छे से चलेगा, यू डोंट नो. अगर आप हाइबरनेट यूज कर रहे हो तो यू डो नॉट नो which version of the hibernate will go well with the spring. That was another really big trouble. Which one? I'm not a jar conflict. These are primary limitations of the Spring framework. So Spring Boot says that, Spring people say that, let us have something where we can unify all Spring projects. We will unify all Spring project. All Spring project मतलब ये Spring Web, Spring Data, Spring AOP, Spring Reactor, Spring Security, Spring Session, Spring Batch, Spring Kafka, whatever, all this kind of stuff. जो प्रोजेक्ट्स आप लोग बात कर रहे हो, ये सारे प्रोजेक्ट जो अलग अलग बने हुए हैं, let us bring all of them under a common roof, under a common umbrella. And that umbrella is nothing but what we call it as a Spring Boot. The one biggest misleading that people have, lot of people say that Spring Boot कुछ तो नया है than Spring. Let me tell you for sure, Spring Boot is not a new framework. आप इसको एक नया फ्रेमवर्क समझने की कोशिश मत करना. Spring Boot is not replacement of Spring. If anyone is considering that, and then a lot of time people say that सर जाने दो, हमको Spring नहीं पढ़ना है, हम लोग सिर्फ Spring Boot पढ़ेंगे. नहीं पढ़ सकते हो, क्योंकि Spring Boot is not replacement of Spring. Spring Boot is not a new standalone framework. It is combination of the various Spring frameworks on Spring platform, like Spring Core, Spring Web MVC, Spring Data, अभी हमने बताया Spring Security, Spring Kafka, Spring Batch, Spring Session, etc. इन सब का एक combo that is called as Spring Boot. तो Spring Boot basically बनाया क्यों गया था? It was created, Spring Boot makes it easy to create standalone production grade Spring application. दो चीजें मैंने बताई. पहली चीज तो standalone, not dependent on your web server. It is standalone. और दूसरी चीज, not hello world kind of application or not laboratory assignments. It is production grade settings जो इंडस्ट्री में यूज किया जाता है. applications, and you want that applications which can just run, no trial and error at the first shot itself. Suresh, I'm teaching that only. The first shot itself आपका एप्लीकेशन रन होना चाहिए. As I said that old version में हमारे प्रॉब्लम क्या थे, कॉन्फ़िगरेशन एंड जार कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वाज अ प्रॉब्लम. तो वी स्पेंड ऑल आवर टाइम कि ये स्प्रिंग का वर्जन इस हाइबरनेट के वर्जन के साथ जा रहा है क्या, ये स्प्रिंग का वर्जन हमारे सिक्योरिटी के वर्जन के साथ जा रहा है क्या, और अगर जा रहा है तो भी इसका सिक्योरिटी का कॉन्फ़िगरेशन अलग से करो, हाइबरनेट का कॉन्फ़िगरेशन अलग से करो, डेटाबेस का कॉन्फ़िगरेशन अलग से करो, एंड देन इसमें से अगर कोई भी कॉन्फ़िगरेशन अगर आपका रॉन्ग हो गया, then you there will be errors, and then you need to go and find out what exactly went wrong. You start repairing that. That itself was a challenge of original Spring. What Spring Boot people say that we will help you to create standalone, matlab no dependency on external web server. नेक्स्ट, प्रोडक्शन ग्रेड, जो इंडस्ट्री में लोग ऑफिशियली सेटिंग्स प्रीफर करते हैं उस लेवल के प्रोजेक्ट, दैट इज सेकंड. एंड दे विल जस्ट रन, नो ट्रायल एंड एरर. पहले शॉट में तुम्हारा एप्लीकेशन रन होना चाहिए, पहले शॉट में, इवन दो यू डोंट अंडरस्टैंड इट, स्टिल एप्लीकेशन रन होना चाहिए इतना फास्ट. दैट इज समथिंग वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. तो सर इन दिस केस उसको कैसे पता चलता है व्हाट इज द प्रोडक्शन ग्रेड? What is production grade? Please note that Spring Boot takes opinionated view of Spring platform and third-party libraries. If we are using some very big word over here, opinionated views. जावा टेक्नोलॉजी का यही प्रॉब्लम है. जावा टेक्नोलॉजी में एक काम करने के लिए 10 लाइब्रेरीज है, एंड दे आर ऑल कॉम्पिटिटर्स. लाइक इफ यू आर यूजिंग ओआरएम, ओआरएम नाम का एक टेक्नोलॉजी होता है, बाद में हम लोग डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे, जिनको पता है दे कैन जस्ट लिसन, नहीं पता है तो यू जस्ट हर्ड दैट ओआरएम नाम का एक कुछ टेक्नोलॉजी होता है जो डेटाबेस कनेक्टिविटी के लिए काम आता है. बट दैट ओआरएम टेक्नोलॉजी, वी कैन हैव हाइबरनेट, वी कैन हैव इक्लिप्स लिंक, वी कैन हैव आईबेटिस, वी कैन हैव टॉर्क, वी कैन हैव लाइक मेनी सच ऑप्शंस. एंड दिस कौन सा ऑप्शन अच्छा है? नो, दिस जावा पीपल व्हाट दे हैव डन इज दैट they given only standards, and then lot of companies they provided their own implementations. And when they provided their own implementation, at that time being a programmer, I am always confused, यार मेरे को इसमें से कौन सा यूज करना है, या फिर तो आई एम नॉट कंफ्यूज, आई हैव माय ओन पर्सनल टेस्ट. कुछ लोगों को मे बी हाइबरनेट अच्छा लगेगा, कुछ लोगों को इक्लिप्स लिंक अच्छा लगेगा, कुछ लोगों को आईबेटिस अच्छा लगेगा. एंड देन जो स्पेशली जो नए से पढ़ते हैं वो लोग तो हमेशा कंफ्यूज होते हैं, क्योंकि उनको अच्छा लगने के लिए उनको एक भी नहीं आता है. दे आर वेरी वेरी कंफ्यूज कि हम लोग क्या यूज करेंगे. करेक्ट. So यहाँ पर what they are doing, Spring Boot people are saying that we are providing you opinionated view. Opinionated view मतलब we had done a survey, Spring people had done a survey, and then they found, okay, which ORM is most popular. They come across the most popular ORM is nothing but Hibernate. If most popular ORM is Hibernate, what will happen is that moment you tell Spring कि मेरे को ORM यूज करना है, automatically it will attach, automatically it will configure Hibernate for you. It will not even ask you, it will automatically take Hibernate directly, so that if you are a newcomer to the Spring, you should not really keep learning Hibernate क्या होता है, Eclipse Link क्या होता है, ये क्या होता है. You should not bother about, you just get started. क्या ये मेरा एप्लीकेशन है, ओआरएम यूज कर रहा है, अंदर उसको जो यूज करना है उसको ऑटोमेटिकली यूज करने दो. It is quick start without you worrying a lot. Something similar, I'll give you one more example. Now if you want to deploy the application, you need a web server. Now which web server is kind of most popular? Again, Java people don't have one web server. Java community has got multiple web servers. So few people love Tomcat, few people love JBoss, few people love Jetty, so few people love some other web server. There are many are there. WebSphere is there, WebLogic is there. So many different web server application servers exist. And now you are always confused. यार मैं कौन सा web server use करूं? So again, Spring people had survey. Spring people said that okay, दुनिया में सबसे ज्यादा कौन सा यूज होता है? And then they came across by दुनिया में सबसे ज्यादा Tomcat यूज होता है. तो now today when you ask Spring Boot create a web application for me. By default, it will create a web application which is Tomcat oriented, which is ready for Tomcat, which is optimized for Tomcat, which has got Tomcat libraries attached to that. और उसमें से भी कौन सा वर्जन, जो वर्जन उसके लिए सुटेबल होगा, उस पर्टिकुलर स्प्रिंग के वर्जन के लिए सुटेबल होगा, एग्जैक्टली वही वर्जन. सो बीइंग अ प्रोग्रामर, आपको रिसर्च करने की जरूरत नहीं है, आपको जार कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चेक करने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू कैन जस्ट ट्रस्ट ऑन द जजमेंट ऑफ द स्प्रिंग बूट पीपल एंड यू कैन गो विद द डिफॉल्ट ऑप्शन नंबर 1. बट देन सर, पर्सनल टेस्ट नाम का कुछ चीज होता है. लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल स्प्रिंग पीपल हैव गिवन टॉमकैट. व्हाट इफ आर कंपनी डोंट लाइक टॉमकैट और आर कस्टमर इज सेइंग दैट हमको टॉमकैट नहीं चाहिए, हमको जेटी चाहिए? नो वरीज. Then you can go to your project and inside project you can reconfigure. Default configuration was Tomcat. You just change one line, two lines, and within 1-2 lines it will be reconfigured for JT. That is something programmer should do. So configuration, which was the biggest bottleneck, jar conflict, which was biggest bottleneck, both of these are automatically handled by the Spring Boot. That is something Spring Boot has done. Spring Boot is not a new framework. It is just combination of all Spring frameworks under single umbrella. सब कुछ एक जगह पे लेके आए, सबका यूनिफिकेशन किया हुआ है. That is what Spring Boot is. Suyash, I guess I have answered it. And then all these applications you can do with minimum configuration. Minimum configuration. And then we have, what are the primary goals? The primary goals, number 1, provide radically faster and widely accessible quick start. Radically faster and widely accessible quick start. Let me show you one quick start. हम लोग उतना आज स्लाइड देखेंगे and then we are going to stop today itself. Tomorrow we will continue with the Spring Boot Hello World application properly. But let me show you radically fast quick start application. I'm not teaching you this demo. I'm just showing you this demo. You can also follow these steps and you can also try to create your application like this without understanding for today. We said that आप लोग यहाँ पर क्यों आए हो? To learn Spring. और Spring में सबसे पॉपुलर फीचर आपको क्या पढ़ना है? REST services. In fact, that is the main reason why people learning Spring Boot. Correct? Let me show you how to create Hello World REST service quick start. Literally quick start. Take a look at this. File, new, Spring Starter project. Oh, now we are not creating the normal Spring. ये Spring Boot का project है. I say that Spring Starter project. ये Spring Starter project अंदर क्या करता है वगैरह वगैरह सब कुछ we will discuss tomorrow. Join at 8 o'clock. Correct? Then let me create SB01 and I'm saying that this is Hello REST application. It is my Hello REST application. I will prefer using Maven. Why I will prefer using Maven? Because मेरे को Maven आता है. जिनको Gradle आता है, they can use Gradle. I love Maven, so I'm using Maven. Correct? Java version, okay, on my machine is 21. 17 से कम वाला allowed भी नहीं है. So I will just go with the 20. Language, please note that these are the languages supported. Of course, I'm going to use the support language called as a Java language. There are few companies which are also developing Spring microservices or Spring application in a Kotlin. Yes, people have started doing that as well. Now group, this is same as a Maven package name. So I say com.sunbeam. And whatever is given in a group, same. I would prefer to give it in a package name. Then artifact ID. The artifact ID and project name, it is one and the same. So these are the general settings that we had, which are corresponding to the settings that we have seen earlier. So you find that this is nothing but the project name quickly. This is basically the project name. Project name in Eclipse. This is something artifact ID. Artifact ID created or like a build jar file output. Then we have group. Again, this is the ID of group ID. Maven group ID, which is indicating the group of developers. This is going to be the package, which is usually same as a group ID. This is application package. by default we are creating a jar files only. So Spring Boot applications prefer jar only, not war. Jar is for Java archive, war is for web archive. jar is for Java archive, war is for web archive. war फाइल हम लोग तब बनाते हैं जब हम लोग एक्सटर्नल टॉमकैट में एप्लीकेशन को डिप्लॉय करते हैं. We are not using that. We are not using that. So I'm saying that it is a jar. So output file will be the build, application build will be application build will be dot jar file. Output file will be dot jar file. Java version, yes, we are using 21. This is given. Language तो हम लोग जावा यूज करेंगे, वो बताने की भी जरूरत नहीं है, अपने को उतना ही आता है. And then we can click on to the next. All good? These are the settings. I click on next. Now, once I click on next, there are so many things are there. You first look at the Spring Boot version and you find that Spring Boot currently version going on is 4. Spring Boot 3 अभी supported भी नहीं है by default. It is available, कर सकते हो, but then by default, now latest version that is available 4.1.0, we will go with the latest version. We will go with the latest version. Take care of it. And then the next thing that I want to do the REST API. You want to do the REST API. So please go to the web and select Spring Web List. Select Spring Web. यहाँ पर आप लोग नोट कर सकते हो, you have a support for AI. हम लोग इसके बारे में बात करेंगे जब हम लोग Spring AI पढ़ेंगे. Done? And for this particular, as I told earlier, I'm going to use STS Eclipse STS ID 5.2. I'm using it. I have posted the message on group as well. आप लोगों को चाहिए इंटेलिजे प्रोफेशनल या अल्टीमेट एडिशन है तो आप लोग वो भी यूज करोगे तो भी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. बट फिलहाल के लिए आई हैव जस्ट सिलेक्टेड स्प्रिंग वेब. हम लोगों को हेलो रेस्ट एपीआई क्रिएट करना है. सो दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट. सिलेक्ट द स्प्रिंग बूट वर्जन एंड सिलेक्ट स्प्रिंग वेब एटलीस्ट. एक डिपेंडेंसी हम लोग सिलेक्ट कर रहे हैं, बाकी हम लोग कुछ नहीं कर रहे. एंड देन वी कैन गो ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट. We can go on to the next. What is happening? Please note that. Take a look at the website start.spring.io. ये नाम का एक वेबसाइट है. What is the start.spring.io website? Start.spring.io website is basically start.spring.io website is basically Spring Initializer project. Oh, Spring Initializer project. जो आपके लिए यहाँ पर प्रोजेक्ट क्रिएट करता है. This is given by the Spring people. Spring.io website. Spring.io वेबसाइट. तो ये उस वेबसाइट को कनेक्ट कर रहा है, उसको बता रहा है कि आपने क्या 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 सिलेक्ट किया हुआ है. एंड बेस्ड ऑन योर सिलेक्शन वहां पर स्प्रिंग इनिशियलाइजर प्रोजेक्ट इज क्रिएटिंग द प्रोजेक्ट एंड दैट पर्टिकुलर जिप इट इज डाउनलोडिंग ओवर एयर. वो वाला जिप यहाँ पर डाउनलोड हो रहा है. अगर हम लोग पहली बार कर रहे हो तो लॉट ऑफ डाउनलोड्स विल हैपन इन बैकग्राउंड. बहुत सारे डाउनलोड बैकग्राउंड में चलेंगे. मेरे केस में जल्दी हो गया है, आपके केस में दिस particular step might take 4-5 minutes also depending on your internet speed. Done? And you see that, oh, my file is ready, my project is ready. Again you have pom.xml and this pom.xml already has got few things. We are not discussing it today. We are just saying that it is a main project once again. Again we have src main java और उसके अंदर मेन क्लास भी हम लोग नहीं लिखने वाले. A main class is already written. Main is already provided. We are not even going to touch that. जो भी लिखा हुआ है, again we will begin explanation of this tomorrow. Pallavi, this is something that is asked in an interview कि startup क्या होता है ये explain करो करके. So that is startup. We will talk about it tomorrow. Then we have next. Then we have new class. I will directly create something called as a hello controller. If you know REST APIs, well and good. Even though you do not know REST APIs, still you can blindly follow the code like hello controller. And this hello controller, I'm saying that this is my something called as a REST controller. This is my REST controller. I will just write only one hello world kind of message. So I'm writing one method, whichever that you like it. And from the method, let me return a message, something hello spring over. Hello spring. That's it. A very basic level class we have created. अब मुझको सिर्फ उसको यूआरएल देना पड़ेगा कि ये से हेलो काम कब करेगा. ये से हेलो काम तब करेगा जब देयर इज अ गेट रिक्वेस्ट. ब्राउजर में से गेट रिक्वेस्ट आएगा फॉर लेट्स से हेलो. So whenever there is a request for /hello, this particular method will execute, and then whatever you have written in that particular method, that will get returned. That's it. Code is done. इतना ही कोड करना है और कुछ भी नहीं करना है. Over. Just go ahead and run your application. Right click. Please note how to run the application. Right click, run as. There is Spring Boot application option is there. Wow. अभी मैंने आपको कुछ बताया भी नहीं कि कौन सा वेब सर्वर, कौन सा क्या, कौन सा कॉन्फ़िगरेशन, नथिंग. वी हैव नॉट अंडरस्टूड एनीथिंग. हमने सिर्फ जाके स्प्रिंग वेब सिलेक्ट किया. दैट इज वन थिंग दैट वी डिड. एंड सेकंड थिंग व्हाट वी डिड, only thing we have created one controller, and inside controller we have written one method. This much of code that we have done, and now I'm just sitting idle. Then my application is started. My application is started, and have you noted that oh, behind the scene it has used Tomcat. मैंने तो उसको बोला भी नहीं था. दिस इज ओपिनेटेड डिफॉल्ट. उसने ऑटोमेटिकली टॉमकैट ले लिया. और वो टॉमकैट अभी कौन से पोर्ट के ऊपर चल रहा है? ए डिफॉल्ट पोर्ट इज 8080. अगर आपके मशीन में 8080 पोर्ट इज नॉट यूज बाय एनी अदर एप्लीकेशन, दिस विल वर्क वेरी वेल. अगर आपके मशीन में ऐसा कोई दूसरा एप्लीकेशन है जो 8080 पोर्ट को ऑक्यूपाई कर रहा है, इन दैट पर्टिकुलर केस दिस कोड मे नॉट वर्क. यू माइट गेट द पोर्ट ऑलरेडी इन यूज एरर. बट मेरे मशीन में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. इट इज वर्किंग वेरी वेल. नाउ ऑल आई डू is I'll use the browser. I'll simply say http://localhost. If we have localhost, we have 8080, or 8080 में what is the URL that you have given? My URL is hello, HELLO. Enter, and you see the output hello spring. Your first REST API is ready without you even understanding what is REST, without you deciding which server you want to use, or whether you want JSON, whether you want XML. No decision making. Everything is ready. This is called as opinionated configuration. If you just want, you can go back and you can take a look at कौन-कौन से jar add हुए, and then you will be surprised. It is not 2, 3 and 4 jars are added. You will check that in this particular one, एक जो आप लोगों ने सिलेक्शन किया था उसके बाद में total number of jars which are downloaded and added in your project are total 72 jars. Total 72 jars are there. Oh, this is too much. And this is which Tomcat version that is been used. If which Tomcat version has been used, oh, by default it is using the Tomcat version, Tomcat 11, maybe the latest Tomcat. They have tested. इसके अंदर जो वर्जन हो रहे, वर्क हो रहे, all those versions are tested by the Spring Boot people. All these versions are tested by Spring Boot people. तो सर इसमें से कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वगैरह होगा क्या? नहीं होगा. 100%. You don't worry about it. तो सर यहाँ पर कुछ एक्सएमएल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन वगैरह होता है क्या? नो, यहाँ पर एक्सएमएल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन नहीं होता है. दे यूजुअली प्रिफर समथिंग कॉल्ड एज एप्लीकेशन प्रॉपर्टीज. दे फॉलो समथिंग कॉल्ड एज एप्लीकेशन प्रॉपर्टीज. दिस एप्लीकेशन प्रॉपर्टीज. समवन इज आस्किंग द क्वेश्चन, अगर हमारा पोर्ट 8080 अगर ऑलरेडी ब्लॉक्ड है और अगर हमें को दूसरा पोर्ट ट्राई करना है, कैसे ट्राई करेंगे? नाउ यू नीड टू डू द लिटिल कॉन्फ़िगरेशन. Go to the file application.properties and you just ask it that server.port. A server.port, you just tell it 8080 नहीं चल रहा है तो let me use 7070. खत्म हो गया. But do not forget to terminate the application. यहाँ पर आपको रेड मार्क दिख रहा है सबको? This red. Please terminate the application first. ये पुराना वाला एप्लीकेशन टर्मिनेट करो, और ये एप्लीकेशन टर्मिनेट करने के बाद में वापस से रन एज एंड अगेन रन एज स्प्रिंग बूट एप्लीकेशन करो. Now when you have run it as a Spring Boot application, now my Tomcat is started at port number 7070, not 8080, right? So you just go back and try to access this. Oh, is it now this 8080 will not be accessible. 8080 का सर्वर बंद है. कौन सा सर्वर चालू है? ए सर्वर जो चालू है, it is 7070 hello. This particular server is working. Is that fantastic? And then you find that it is hello spring application is up and running. See, without understanding also you can write the code of Spring Boot. But let me assure you, without understanding तुम Spring Boot का कोड लिख सकते हो, इंटरव्यू कभी नहीं क्लियर कर सकते हो. If you really want to clear the interview, learn step by step. invest your time. Do not directly get the ready-made solution from the chat GPT and copilot. जब आप लोग प्रोडक्शन में काम करोगे, यूज एआई, नो डाउट ऑन दैट, बट फर्स्ट राइट सम स्मॉल डेमोस टू हैव द क्लैरिटी ऑफ द concepts. And once you have clarity on concepts, then you assist yourself with AI to speed up your development. That is absolutely fine. This will give you much better results. I was talking about what is Spring Boot. उतना खत्म करते हैं, at least introduction, and then we'll stop it. Another 10 minutes, guys. Take a look at. So we were talking about what is this. So this is a quick start. मैंने आपको सचमुच quick start करके दिखाया, literally REST application बना के दिखाया, without much understanding, hardly 4 lines of code. Done. And we say that it is opinionated configuration. ऊपर बताया हुआ इसे. Opinionated configuration मतलब जो सबसे ज्यादा यूज होने वाले लाइब्रेरीज है, they are by default available. They are by default available, but if you need, you can also quickly modify the configuration. You can quickly modify the configuration into the application.properties file, or you can add some more dependencies in a pom.xml file. Done. Then managing version of the dependencies with the starter projects. हम लोगों ने किसी का भी कोई भी डिपेंडेंसी हैंडल नहीं किया है, लेकिन बिहाइंड द सीन कुछ तो हुआ है. क्या हुआ है? वी हैव एडेड समथिंग कॉल्ड एज अ स्प्रिंग स्टार्टर वेब एमवीसी. दिस इज कॉल्ड a starter dependency. And this starter dependency, please note that this starter dependency has brought all other required jar, all other dependencies. Someone want to see और कौन से dependencies add हुए, तो प्लीज नोट दैट मैं pom.xml में हूं. इस pom.xml में बाजू में कहीं पर तो आपको dependencies दिखाई देंगे. You can just go to the dependencies and you can see that, oh, under these are the dependencies. These are the dependencies. And these dependencies are internally bringing which all other dependencies, all jars. If you want to watch that, please look into the dependency hierarchy. ये आपको बताएगा कि अंदर कितने dependencies add हुए. So you'll find that actually number of jars जितने add हुए उतने यहाँ पर है. Total 72 jars are added in my case at the moment. 72. So आपको मैन्युअली अगर आपको 72 ऐड करने पड़ते तो वाट लग जाती. हम लोग वे स्प्रिंग वेब के वक्त हम लोग ये मैन्युअली करते थे. स्प्रिंग बूट सेज दैट यू जस्ट ऐड वन, और वो भी आपने ऐड नहीं किया है, आपने सिर्फ एक चेक मार्क सिलेक्ट किया है, एंड देन इट हैज टेकन केयर ऑफ इट. सो इजी. Going ahead, we have like what we are talking about. It provide lot of non-functional common features, security, servers, health check, all extra functionality. It is available. That is good. And then no extra code generation. आपको एडिशनली खुद से कुछ कोड नहीं लिखना पड़ेगा. नो एक्सएमएल फाइल्स. कोड जनरेट नहीं होगा, ऑटो जनरेट नहीं होगा. दे हैव ऑलरेडी गिवन यू लॉट ऑफ कोड इन बैकग्राउंड. द कोड इज ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल. ऐसा नहीं है कि लाइक आपके लिए ऑन द बिहाफ ऑफ यू सम कोड इज रिटन बाय समवन. नो, एक्सेप्ट दैट मेन मेथड. The main method is automatically written on the behalf of you, but the rest of the things, they are not written. You write it whatever that you want it. Correct? It is easy deployment and containerization with something called as an embedded web server. Oh, embedded web server. You know, in the earlier times, what used to happen? Our application, we used to deploy into the Tomcat. In Spring Web, we used to deploy our application into the Tomcat. Now, with the new one, what happened? We are no more adding our application into the Tomcat. In fact, the process has been reversed. Now you see that Tomcat itself is added in my application. अब मेरे एप्लीकेशन के अंदर Tomcat आ गया है. इसको हम लोग कहते हैं समथिंग कॉल्ड एज अ एम्बेडेड Tomcat और एम्बेडेड वेब सर्वर. सी योर लाइफ इज वेरी सिंपल. अब आपको जाके कहीं पर Tomcat ढूंढने की जरूरत नहीं. Tomcat आपके एप्लीकेशन में है. यू जस्ट रन इट लाइक अ नॉर्मल जावा एप्लीकेशन and the Tomcat will run from your application. That is a beauty. So इसका मतलब है सर, इसका मतलब यू आर सेइंग दैट अब यहां से आगे सिर्फ स्प्रिंग बूट यूज करना चाहिए. यस, यहां से आगे सिर्फ स्प्रिंग बूट यूज करना चाहिए. तो सर डू वी डू लाइक दैट? आवर कंपनी हैज गॉट सम ओल्ड स्प्रिंग एप्लीकेशंस. शुड वी migrate all those applications to the Spring Boot? I don't recommend that. Please note that Spring Boot is designed, it is recommended to use for the new applications. It is for new applications and not for porting the legacy Spring application. Existing Spring application को Spring Boot में convert करने में बहुत वाट लगती है. It is not that easy. You need to put in a lot of efforts. तो अगर आपके पास आपके कंपनी में कोई पुराना Spring वेब एप्लीकेशन चल रहा है, I would say that keep it as it is, use it as it is. Keep developing as it is, whatever that you need it, little bit here and there. If your company is starting any new projects, then don't use Spring Web, then use Spring Boot specifically. That is what the Spring Boot is designed. It is not designed for migrating old project to new project. जैसे old project को old जगह पे रहने दो, जितने सारे नए प्रोजेक्ट बनाओगे उसको Spring Boot से क्रिएट करना. And then we can have one big picture of what Spring Boot look like. Spring Boot look like this. ये मेरा Spring Boot है. तो Spring Boot, I was saying that Spring Boot is my umbrella. मैं आपको बता रहा था Spring Boot is my umbrella term. And this umbrella term is actually covering, everything. Everything means you talk about Spring REST, you talk about Spring Session, you talk about Spring Batch, Spring Integration, Spring Security, Spring Kafka, Spring Social Media, Spring Big Data, Spring Data, you just name it. मैंने डॉट 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 लिखा है. जितने सारे नई चीजें आती जाएगी वो सारी Spring Boot के अंडर they will start integrating it, they will put it under Spring Boot. And this whole functionality, ये जो आपको दिख रहा है Spring REST, Spring Big Data, Spring Kafka, Spring Batch, ये सब कुछ का फाउंडेशन क्या है? The foundation is Spring Framework. The first diagram that I shown you. अभी जो हमने पिछले दो डेमो जो किए, those demos were Spring Framework, plain Spring Framework. Our previous two demos were plain Spring Framework. That's it. तो final formula, एक simple mental model. How do I remember how Spring Boot is different than Spring? How Spring Boot is different than Spring or how Spring Boot is a wrapper on Spring? मैंने सबसे नीचे एक formula लिखा हुआ है. Read that formula and remember that formula. So Spring Boot is basically a Spring framework plus embedded web server. Tomcat is part of my application. Plus automatic configuration. Manual configuration करने की जरूरत नहीं है. It is automatic configuration. It is opinionated configuration. That is given. मतलब जो जो प्रॉब्लम्स थे जार कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के, जो कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम थे, लाइक चूजिंग द appropriate versions and all those problems are gone. Configuration issues are gone. Correct? Minus XML configuration. Spring Boot strongly recommend do not use XML anymore. पुराने एप्लीकेशन में लोग XML यूज करते थे, यहाँ पर XML बिल्कुल नहीं यूज करना है. अगर यूज करना है तो वो application.properties फाइल है, application.yaml फाइल है, that you can use it. And there are no more jar conflict, minus jar conflict. ये सब कुछ you can see, oh this is nothing but Spring Boot. यहाँ पर ऑटोमेटिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन क्या हो रहा है? आपका जो वेब एप्लीकेशन है, आपका जो टॉमकैट है, योर टॉमकैट वाज ऑटोमेटिकली कॉन्फ़िगर्ड. टॉमकैट का पोर्ट नंबर 8080 वाज ऑटोमेटिकली कॉन्फ़िगर्ड. हमने कुछ बोला भी नहीं कि कौन से पोर्ट के ऊपर रन करना है. दैट वाज ऑल टेकन ऑटोमेटिकली. In future, you start using like database connectivity or you start using security. Moment you add the security, the default security is automatically configured. Basic security. Of course, as per your application, you need to go ahead, you need to modify it. ये आपको करना ही पड़ेगा. उसके लिए कुछ नहीं कर सकते. लेकिन the basic minimal version will be ready. That is called as automatic configuration. जो configuration आपको नहीं करने की जरूरत है. I hope Suresh that is clear. Is this fine? May I have some quick feedback? You got the big picture clear? What exactly the Spring Boot is all about? Introduction to Spring Boot. How it is different than the Spring. Clear? That is good. With this, I believe we can stop for today. आज के लिए इतना बहुत है. I'll be here for another 10-15 minutes. किसी को कुछ doubts है तो those people can wait. And if you do not have any doubts, you can leave. Meeting खत्म होने के बाद में within half an hour, I will upload the slides, screenshots, notes, today's notes, everything onto the Git repository. And video process होने के लिए 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours it is commonly required. मतलब उसके लिए ज्यादा कोई ऑप्शन मेरे पास नहीं है, उतना टाइम यूजुअली लगेगा. Is that fine? चलो, let us stop over here. Thank you very much for attending. People who have doubts, they can wait. Other, they can leave. Bye bye.